in the Shelton City Hall auditorium via Zoom and through a phone link is hereby called to order. This meeting is also being carried live on YouTube. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I invite those participating remotely to do the same. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll start off with a roll call of the commission. Please verbally indicate you are present when your name is called. Commissioner Kelly.
Present.
Commissioner Parkins.
Present.
Commissioner Lascos.
Present.
Commissioner Motto is not here yet. She's trying to log in. Commissioner Ticky.
Present.
Myself, Commissioner Harger. Mr. Rossetti, our administrator.
Present.
Mr. Panico, our consultant.
Present.
Ms. Renassos, our recording secretary.
Present.
Charbonneau, our stenographer.
Present.
Very good. And Attorney Francis Teodoso, our corporation counsel.
Present.
For the record, both alternate commissioners Onofrio and Usau are unavailable for this evening's meeting. Okay, and let me just check. Commissioner Motto, can you signify you're present?
Hi, I'm here.
Thank you. Very good. And Mr. Nappy is excused. On the agenda this evening is the continuation of 3 public hearings and the opening of a public hearing for a separate application. Before continuing, I'd like everyone present to note the following. Mr. Rossetti will act as the Zoom meeting host. Commissioners are please asked to identify yourself and wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking to make sure we are not all speaking over each other and to make sure our recording secretary is clear as to who is speaking. The chair will ask Mr. Rossetti to indicate if any written comments were received from members of the public no later than 24 hours before the start of this evening's meeting. And that's after an agenda item is recognized. If written comments were received, they will be acknowledged for the record. The applicant and/or its associates will make their presentation. The commission can ask questions during a presentation or at its conclusion. The applicant and/or associates can answer commission questions at the time they're presented or at the conclusion of the presentation. The public will then be recognized to comment on the application. The applicant's attorney and/or associates will be given the opportunity to address any comments or questions from the public after the last person from the public has been given the opportunity to speak. If the commission feels further information is needed from the applicant, the chair will ask for a motion to continue the public hearing. The public hearing remains open. The commission is not allowed to make any public comment, discuss any part of the applicant's and/or his associate's presentation, or receive additional information from anyone. If the commission feels the applicant and/or his associates have answered all questions and have addressed all concerns from the commission and/or public, the chair will ask, who is that? The chair will ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Staff will then schedule a discussion about the application at an upcoming commission meeting, during which time the commission will be asked by the chair and how it wants to proceed. Members of the public who would like to speak at the point in the public hearing when the chair calls for public comment are asked to be aware of the following. Those in the audience who would like to make comments during the public portion of any of tonight's public hearings need to list their name and address on the appropriate sheet on the table in the middle of the room. This is to assist the recording secretary and stenographer when doing the minutes and transcript of the public hearing. If you are participating via Zoom at the appropriate time, please use Zoom's raise your hand feature to identify yourself when we move to the public portion. If you are participating via phone, please dial *9 to identify yourself when we move to the public portion. Please direct comments and questions to the chair and to the chair only, not to the applicant and/or his associates. Comments from the public should address specific criteria of the zoning regulations, the merits of the application, and be new information, not a repeat of comments previously presented. Members of the public are expected to practice appropriate etiquette by being quiet, observant, and respectful. Disruptive attendees may be removed from verbally participating. So first is the continuation of the public hearing for application 2204, Fred Monahan, for a text change of Schedule A, line 10A, and Section 33 to permit farm stores on farmland in R1 and R1A zones. The public hearing for this application opened on March 29th, 2022, and the proposal was presented by the applicants and its attorney. There were several questions from the commission regarding the nature of the proposed text change. Public hearing was continued to April 20th, and during the public portion of that meeting, 13 residents opposing the application spoke, as well as a member of the Shelton Conservation Commission. Public hearing was left open, and at the commission's meeting on June 22nd, the applicant reviewed revised use line 10 and section 31.7 language. The public hearing was continued again. At previous meetings, the chair acknowledged the documents that have been received and posted to the city's website. Since our June 22nd meeting, other documents received and posted to the city's website are 8 City of Shelton assessor cards for properties on School Street, Beardsley Road, Walnut Tree Hill Road, Sawmill City Road, Waverly Road, and Booth Hill Road, and a revised Schedule A in section 33.31. Mr. Rossetti, any other reports, materials, or correspondence received within the time period for this application that need to be acknowledged for the record?
Yes,
And those are?
there were 3 written letters in support of the application. Beardsley, Stearns, and Peter Marciano, all of us were in support,
Mhm.
as well as a petition with 670 plus county signatures in support of the proposal
Mhm.
to support farm stores, agriculture in the area.
Mhm.
The beauty of, yeah.
Mhm.
And so I believe that list is counting. Those notifications were sent in within the 24-hour time period, but they did not meet kind of our week cutoff, so I did not have time to include them online.
Okay. Attorney Bellis, are you present?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and are you representing the applicant?
I am.
Okay, so please identify yourself for the record. Would you please begin by reviewing the new material posted to the city's website, especially the change in language in the application?
Yes, I'll be glad to. First, I'm attorney Stephen Bellis. I live at 121 Lane Street in Shelton. I'm with the Pellegrino Law Firm. I represent the applicant, Fred Monahan, for this text amendment. I've been the attorney for the farmers in Shelton for many, many, many years. And although Mr. Monahan's name is on the application, there are other farmers that support this application, but their names may not be on the application. They've submitted letters. So with that, let me start by saying that after our last hearing, there was a suggestion made, and I thought a good one, to change Schedule A and put the to put this particular item for a farm store for retail sales of agricultural products under 9D as in dog. Right now, 9A deals with farms, trucks, gardens, forests, nurseries. B deals with keeping and raising livestock, horses and whatnot. And C deals with farm wineries. I just want the commission to know under 9A, B, and C, if you have a farm nursery, for instance, or a greenhouse, or if you want to keep livestock, or if you want to build a farm winery, you do not have to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission for a special exception. It's permitted under 45, section 45.7, 8, 9, and 10. And so if one wanted to have a building right now and store horses, livestock, whatever, the only requirement would be set forth in 45.8, and any building used for the housing of livestock or manure shall be set back not less than 100 feet from any street line and 50 feet from any other property line. Basically, same thing with a winery. If you want to have a winery with a building right now in Shelton, you don't need to get a special exception. You can, as long as any proposed building intended for the farm winery purposes shall be located not less than 100 feet from any street or property line. That's the only requirements. I am not suggesting that the farm store have that very little oversight with your Planning and Zoning Commission. I have thus changed the regulation to say that if there's going to be a farm store, you have to abide by the special exception section in our zoning regulations, which in this case is 33 point, we're up to 21, I believe. We have 20 other special exceptions ahead of this one. And what that really means is, just so everyone, and I'm sure you all are aware, that if one wants to look at applying for a farm store, first you have to have 5 or greater acres, and then you have to look to this special exception regulation that I drafted. So it's unlike a winery or a building with livestock or a building with a nursery or any of those things where you could just do it. So let's look at what I did. I changed that from being a site plan review to a special exception review. And as you all know, the special exception review is a permitted use. However, the commission gets to analyze whether the proposal affects the health and safety of the residents around the application, the property in question. So you have a review of that specific application. And when that application comes in, you would look at the engineered drawings like you do all the time, where the parking is, where the building is, where the driveway is, all the things you always look at, the buffer, the setbacks and whatnot. So you're going to, anyone who wants to do a farm store cannot just go to the building department and pull a permit. They'd have to come before your commission. So the first thing, I'm only going to talk about the changes. As you all remember, we limited this, that a farm store can't be built on any lot that is greater than 5 acres or 10 acres, but requires that the land be taxed as farmland under our Connecticut 490. And Shelton keeps a list of those properties. I'm not 100% certain, but I think there's approximately 25 parcels that are zoned for Public Act 490. But the analysis.
Are you sure you meant zoned? Or they qualify?
I may have used the word zoned. I meant taxed.
Okay.
There's 25 parcel that I did misspeak. Thank you. There are approximately 25 parcels that are taxed as farmland under Public Act 490 in Shelton that I could find. There could be 26, there could be, I don't know, but there's approximately 25. But more importantly, that's not enough. The person also who applies must be a farmer. And the way you can tell whether someone's a farmer is not whether they wear green jeans and a t-shirt, but whether they file a tax return that says farmer on it with a Schedule F. So if someone were a real farmer, they would file a tax return that they list themselves as a farmer. They list the income that they make from farming. They list the expenses that they have from farming, and they report the gain or loss on Schedule F. And then the third requirement is that they have to be registered with the USDA as an agricultural producer. So you need those three requirements. That has not
Karen
changed.
Ellis, do you have any information on what it takes to be registered with the USDA as an agricultural producer?
There is a handbook, I think, that that we submitted earlier that tells you it should be part of the material what the USDA agricultural requirements are.
Okay.
So that part has not changed. The hours of operation are limited. They may be open 8 a.m. and to 7 p.m. It could be closed sooner, but it can't be later than that. The parking was not less than one space per 125 feet of gross area of the store. We talked about it being on gravel, pavement, or millings. The only other change that was made was in the setbacks, and I think Tony Panico had a suggestion, and I liked it. The setbacks for an R1 zone are rather small. So an R1 has a setback of the street line of 40 feet and a setback from a rear line of 30 feet and a side yard of 30 feet. That's what a current R1 setback is. That was changed by me to require the building and the parking lot be 100 feet from the street or side or rear property lines. And I took that number because in section 45, they had a setback for a building if you kept or raised livestock. They had it 100 feet from the street line and only 50 feet from property lines. And the winery was 100 feet from any property or line or street line. So I went with the maximum 100 feet that's already in our regulations. That's where I picked up that number. So right now, those are the changes that were made. And I think they're significant changes. And the biggest change is now it requires a special exception application and public hearing by the Planning and Zoning Commission before one could approve a farm store. You have to meet all these elements that I've listed in section 33.21. You'd have to have setbacks of 100 feet for the building and parking lot. And you have to be all the things that I've told you about taxed as 490, being a farmer and being registered. According, and I'll repeat this, but if I've said it already, I think that there are only 4 eligible farmers in our town today that file tax returns, have farmland that's 490 and are registered with the USDA. There's only 4 gentlemen. I'm not even sure if they're all gentlemen. I think one is a woman. So there's not many.
USDA registration, is that a certificate, a document that needs to be posted on their premises somewhere? Just as if you went to a hairdresser or a restaurant or somewhere and they have to have a license.
Yeah, I don't know whether you have to post that or not.
Okay, I'll follow up
But
on that.
there's only 4 people that currently that this would apply to. So we're not talking about hundreds of people that would want to do this. There's very limited number of people that want to do this. And I think I've said it to you before, and I'll say it again, that the purpose of this text amendment is not for any particular or specific location. It's to, when someone has selected a particular location, they come to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then you people either approve it or deny it. What this text amendment does is it allows, or hopes, the hope is that it will allow either these farmers, their children, or others to want to keep the property farmland, so that it can be used as farmland, because remember, 50% of whatever's grown would be sold in that store, so that you keep the farms that we do have, and it allows these farmers to have some income that allows them to pay the taxes, pay the fuel costs, pay for the fertilizer, all the things that we know are quite expensive for farmers, and to pay the labor so that they can continue and maintain to be farmers. I don't want to get into a big lecture, but I'm sure most of you have read that with climate change, one of the biggest things that they're encouraging local municipalities to do is to allow food and crops to be grown in your own local town, instead of growing tomatoes in Mexico, putting it on a truck, paying diesel fuel to truck it 3,000 miles up to Connecticut, then putting it into a store, like a grocery store, and then heating and doing all that in the store, and then you buying your tomato. It's economically stupid doing that. It is against climate policy today. So there is a strong policy, public policy, of keeping local produce local. And the way to do that, that helps both the town and the farmer, is to have these farm stores. That's what's been suggested by the Department of Agriculture. That's what economists have suggested are more efficient, and that's what the farmers want. So that's the purpose of these farm stores. And again, we're not talking about a particular location here. This is a text amendment, but I listened to all the public's comments. I listened to the commission's comments, and I listened to Mr. Panico's comments. And those are the changes that I made that allows this commission, I think, more say on whether a farm store would be appropriate on a particular site. And
Okay,
that's
Attorney Ellis, would you speak to the language in 33.21.7 buffer? There were no changes made to that. It currently reads, if the building is adjacent to a residential neighborhood, there shall be a green belt having a minimum width of 20 feet, wooded or landscaped, with plantings / trees to provide effective buffering from a surrounding residential neighborhood. So there was no attempt to change that, no thought to do that?
I'm not sure what the thought would be. The idea is that one would not be allowed to clear the land right up to the property line. That was the thinking on that. So if you have a wooded area, that you would at least allow the woods to remain for 20 feet. If you don't have a wooded area, then you would be expected to plant different trees to act as a buffer.
And the lighting in 33.21.4 exterior lighting, which reads, the lighting in the parking lot and exterior of buildings shall be dark sky lighting as defined by the IDA. No changes in that?
That's the standard lighting that does not allow the light to go over people's property lines. It keeps the light focused down.
Okay, and then finally,
I think I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
okay, In dot 33.21.2 size, you did say only refer to land less than 10 acres. You did not go into anything as it currently reads that the store shall not exceed 3,000 square feet if 10 acres or greater. Did you change any language there?
I didn't. What I didn't change that. That's not to say that the commission could not, but a store of 2,000 square feet retail would be allowed on a 5-acre piece. But if you wanted it to have it larger, it would be maxed out at 3,000. It could never be greater than that, but you would need at least 10 acres of land to do that. And again, I think that when you get to the special exception hearing, the commission could very well say, looking at this particular lot, looking at its location, looking at its topography, looking at all the things that you look at normally, a building of 3,000 feet would not be appropriate or doesn't fit or whatever. And that the commission would say, we will allow this store. However, we think that for health and safety reasons, the store should be not larger than, I don't know, 1,000 square feet, whatever you people decide. I was putting maximums on these, but under the special exception, when I say you, I don't mean the Commissioner Harger, I mean the commission who's hearing this in the future could say, no, that's not appropriate. That's not an appropriate size building. This would be more appropriate.
Okay, so let me just ask if any commissioners have any questions for Attorney Bellis.
Yeah, I do.
Commissioner Kelly?
Attorney Bellis, you mentioned about the square foot of the retail space.
Yeah.
Now, you don't mention the square foot of the building.
Yes. So
Total building.
Yeah,
Is the
there-
square footage of the store expected to be the total square footage of the building?
So on a farm, it really depends. It's hard for me to answer that, Commissioner Kelly, because depending on the size of a lot, there's different coverage areas that are allowed for a building. You know what I'm saying? What I mean by that is if you have a lot that's 10 acres, then under our regulations, you can only have such a size of a building with the coverages that are allowed under our Schedule A in that zone. But if you had 100-acre parcel, you could have more buildings. You follow what I'm saying? So I couldn't say.
I do.
Okay.
But
I can't say.
you did it one time. That's why I'm asking you. On your first proposal, which is 33.72, the structure shall not exceed 6,000 square foot of gross building area.
I think that the commission pointed out to me that that was not appropriate way to go about it because it depends on the size of the lot and what other buildings are on the lot.
Okay, but when well, actually that is the change, but the initial was not exceed 2,000 for retail of the farm building. So what I'm actually saying is that, well, is 2,000, do you need more square footage for add-ons, that's for refrigeration, so on and so forth? And what would that be?
No.
The overall building?
Yeah, if that's the retail area, whatever's needed for retail would be included in the 2,000. What we didn't want is if someone had a barn next door to it, that would be included. Or where you keep your tractors. I don't know what they call those buildings, outbuildings, I guess.
Right.
Anything in connection with the retail, that building cannot exceed 2,000 square feet.
Right, and that's what the parking would be.
That's what the parking would be based, would be based on that.
Steve, I don't think you mean the building can't exceed the 3,000. It's that portion of the building devoted to retail space that cannot exceed the 3,000.
It
That's
could,
not what he's saying.
Yeah, I think what I'm saying is if there's a store, that store area could be in a farm building that's already existing, it could be,
Yes,
or it could be newly constructed, right?
correct.
And the store itself could not exceed, it could be less. I just put the maximum limit. It could be, it certainly can be less if the commission feels when they have the special exception hearing, it could be less. But it was just a maximum, outside maximum. I guess it's like a speed limit. You know, yeah, if it's raining out and it's dark, you're not going to go 75 miles an hour. But if the conditions are excellent and it's dry and sunny, then you can't, no matter even how beautiful it is outside, you can't go beyond 75 miles per hour. These are what I'm trying to say here. These are,
That's a pretty poor analogy.
Yeah, that is.
that's a bad analogy.
That's
Yeah.
a really bad analogy.
Are you in
But
Nevada somewhere?
I'm just
or no?
trying to get clarification here. The retail part of a building cannot exceed 2,000, but the building itself may be 10,000 square feet. If
Sure.
it contains the kitchen or the processing area, that sort of thing. But of that building, only 2,000 square feet is all that can be designated for the retail, but the building could be much larger.
That's correct.
The building, the building is, the size of any building is already set in our zoning regulations, right?
Okay,
Under,
we were just trying to get clarification on that part, and I think
yeah, that you would
That's right.
follow the.
building could be large, but the retail part of it can only be 2,000 square feet.
It could be large, but it can't be larger than what's allowed in Schedule B. So that they have in Schedule B under R1 now, the maximum lot coverage
Got it.
for impervious areas 30%. The maximum lot coverage is 25% of versus the lot. So those numbers, you're still bound by those numbers. You can't just build 100,000 square foot building and have
It's not
2,000 of it retail. That's what I'm
Not
trying to get at.
Really
Not if you only have a 5-acre plot, you're right. But if you have a 10-acre plot, you could.
10-acre plot, you can have a
Yeah,
large.
it's a function of the lot size, Steve.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's a function of the lot. I can't answer that question unless I know the size of the lot.
Mhm.
You did answer.
Let me just point out to the members of the public, there are no comments, no murmuring, no hiccups, nothing. This is a hearing for the applicant and the commission to discuss this proposal. Thank you. All right,
So-
Attorney Bellis, did you have anything else, or Mr. Canico, did you have anything else?
No, I went through the applicant's revised material that he submitted a couple weeks ago. And the content of it is not a problem to me. If the commission were to move forward with it, I would simply change some language to be more consistent with the language of our zoning regulations. That's all, without changing the particular standards. The
And we
particular
have
standards
a-
reflect what we have discussed with the applicant before.
Okay, and we have a way to go because we still have the public portion. We still have to decide at some point when we're going to close the public hearing, and we still have discussion at a future meeting among the members of the commission. So
Correct.
there's still a little bit of time here. This is not something that's going to be anywhere close tonight. So, all right, so any other commissioner have any other questions, comments, or concerns for Attorney Bellis? Okay, if not, then we will move into the public portion. So as I mentioned,
Jenny,
go ahead.
Jenny, just,
Go ahead, Attorney Mato.
Elaine
I mean,
Mato.
Commissioner
hello.
Mato.
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay now?
It sounds like this proposal would divert quite a bit of land actually from the farming activity. And just wondered if they'd given any thought to having an actual store somewhere in a commercial zone for the same purpose.
Okay. Attorney Bellis, can you address that?
Sure. The idea of of having 2,000 square feet out of 200,000 square feet, which is 5 acres, or 400,000 square feet, I don't think that the store would take up that much of the farmland. So I think it would be, not great in math, but what is it, 1% perhaps of the land would have the store on it. So it's not large. If you look, and again, I'm trying to make this clear that you didn't like my speed limit thing, so I'll come up with something else. This is a maximum amount. If the store were in the commission's feeling to be 1,000 square feet because of the lot size and topography, then you have 200,000 square feet of farmland and 1,000 square feet of a building. It doesn't take up a lot of the land. What it does is it does two things, Commissioner Amato. It encourages the public to go to the farm to purchase the product and to see the farm. So when you have your 2-year-old grandchild like I have, you take that child and you say, this is where we grow corn. And then we buy and you see the cornfields, and then you buy your fresh corn inside the store. So it encourages people to see the farm itself. If we put these farm stores, I don't know, downtown Shelton, it really kind of defeats the purpose of showing the public or educating the public on why we need farms and what farms do. So I respect your suggestion, but I don't think that's what the farmers want.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful.
Any other commissioners have any comments, questions, or concerns for the applicant? All right, now we will move to the public portion. And if you have not already indicated on the sign-in sheet on the table that you wish to make comments on this particular application, please do so at this time. And we will start with people in the auditorium. Can I have that, please? And then we will move to the people who are participating by Zoom or by phone. And let me just remark that one of the protocols that we have always followed here on the zoning commission, when we have a number of people, that while we do want to give everyone their chance to speak, if you come up to the podium when your name is called and your comments replicate someone's comments that has gone before you, we would just ask that you be considerate enough to say whether or not you agree or not agree with that particular party. So the first one on the list is Anthony Simonetti. When you come up to the mic, please state your name and address, and if you have a difficult spelling for your name, please spell it out for the benefit. Before you start, Mr. Simonetti, Mr. Rossetti, is it better that he comes to the table here? Okay, all right. Mr. Panico, if you are finding that you cannot hear anybody's comment from the podium, please speak up. Thank you. All right, Mr. Simonetti, you have the floor.
Get rid of this.
My name is Anthony Simonetti. I live at 6 Hayfield Drive, Shelton, Connecticut. I appreciate the commission for what they do. I know it's a volunteer position. One of the remarks that was made by Mr. Bellis about the farmer's market, we have a farmer's market downtown Shelton. It's there so we can draw in even more than just the people from our area, our farmers, but other farmers also. So we get a different variety of crops and farm-made items. With there's 20 to 24 properties in Shelton. 4 of them actually are in the White Hills area where I live. They all could be, if they meet the criteria that this amendments are calling for, they all could have a farm store on them. I'm not saying they would, but they could. And my question is, when this was proposed, I don't remember seeing any advertisement of it as you would if you were putting up a building. You're making a lot of changes here. And I thought that the people who are around these 24 areas should have been notified by some method that, you know, there was some text amendments being made that might affect their area.
Excuse me,
People
Mr.
live in some of
Simonetti,
these
hold up for a minute. Mr. Rossetti, can you confirm we did have a legal notice that went in on this? How was this to be held?
Don't notify properties for text.
Okay. All
We
right,
get
and
this
attorney,
text off here.
what is that, Mr. Panico?
Can we get the text off of the Zoom screen? I'm looking at thank you.
Okay.
It's
All right, and,
difficult enough to hear the people.
Attorney Tito, so can you address that comment from Mr.
Text
Simonetti
change.
about the text change and notification?
The text change is being proposed by the applicant,
Mm-hmm,
not being proposed by the commission.
mm-hmm.
Change the zoning regulation.
It reads, text change of Schedule A, line 10A, and Section 33 to permit farm stores on farmland in R1 and R1A zones.
Was the original text in the town clerk's office?
Mr. Rossetti, can you hear that?
Was the original text change proposed in the town clerk's office?
So, yeah.
If it was there, then it's sufficient, but I'll check it.
Say it again.
I said if it's in the town clerk's office, it is sufficient, but I will check it.
They would have,
So it did not have to be noted to the home.
they would have filed it with the town clerk?
Yes.
In one area where the farm store could be placed, there are some homes that families have made great investments in and they did not receive a notice that I'm aware of. These homes are something that they put a lot of their time, their effort into. They've come to these homes because they wanted peace and tranquility around them at all times. One of the things I note that in the amendment, it says 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the store to be open. I think that's a long time to be open till 8 o'clock. The 7 a.m. doesn't bother so much, but the 8 a.m. does. The other thing is, I believe what if they can keep animals on this property? Is there a number of animals they can keep, or is that under a separate heading? How much animals can be on a property that has a farm on it? And I think of the 2,000 square feet, does that include, let's say, a large walk-in freezer, or just the refrigerators that you would keep display in, or is it also a production area freezer, that type of thing? Would that be included in the 2,000? The amendments are lengthy and can be a little confusing for people in the public. I think they need to be explained better to the people in the public at some time, or before we got to this point at least. There's a sorry for the notes of you from home, got dropped. And is 5 acres enough? There should be more acres to add 2,000 square feet, and maybe a question also. And maybe the buffer should be longer, more than 100 feet from road inside for the building, and that there should be a substantial amount of blockage around the building so that it would be noticeable from other people's properties in the area. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simonetti. Next on the list is Mike Cordadella.
Mike Cordadella, 1 East Village Road. My property, which is adjacent to the reported property, would be the most negatively impacted from this proposed farm store. First is the increase in value of my residential property by allowing commercial property right next door. Second is location, being as close to the Buddha and East Village Road intersection to infringe on the privacy I currently enjoy. Third is the noise associated with live bands being present for holidays and special events. Fourth is light pollution, parking lot being lit after hours for security reasons, first wider till closing of the store. Fifth, the facility still being open after hours. Employees prepping for opening the store, cleaning up after the store is closed. 6 is the increase in traffic flow, which is already an issue on peak hours. Also on street parking that will be associated with holiday sales. 7 is the excess water runoff from hardscape surfaces affecting my leaves and fields, which is right adjacent to the wooded property. 8 is litter. I currently pick up litter in front of my property 2 to 3 times a week. I think it'd become a full-time job with this store next there, people driving that quantity. Lastly, I'd like to put to bed the notion that we're farm haters. Farms should be on property that is zoned for farming. Stores should be in commercial zone property and houses on residential zone property. These zones were put in place for a reason, protect one type zone from impinging upon the others. They should not be able to change the benefit the first few versus the majority. All the text change to financially benefit Gary Wood, Stone Gardens, at everyone else's expense is not right. Thank you for your time and listening to my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Cardadella. Mr. Harbinson, I'll give you the option. Did you want to speak now or defer to after?
I'll go now.
Okay.
Thank you, Commission. My name is Tom Harbinson, 15 Soundcrest Drive. I'm a 5th-generation farmer. I am a manager at Jones Family Farms. I am the chairman of the Conservation Commission, and I am not representing the farm, nor am I representing the Conservation Commission, but I'm just speaking as a citizen. First question I have is regarding the existing regulation Schedule 10A, Schedule A, line 10, regarding a farm stand for less than 300 square feet stand for produce grown on premises. Will that remain? This is not going to eliminate that, correct?
Present all your questions
Sure.
and then the applicant's attorney will address
Okay.
them as all the other comments that would
Sure.
come before or after, okay?
The next thing I have is there is posted on the website a June 8th site plan, section 31, and a July 14th statement of uses, section 33. Are they both being utilized here, or is it just the section 33 and not section 31?
Okay,
If they are both being used, there is some conflict between 31.7.8 setbacks saying 50 feet and 33.21.8 saying setbacks of 100 feet. Since there is some harmony in the language between both sections 31 and 33, I think it's important to clarify when you are talking about a farm store. So on section 31.7.2, when it says the store, I think you should say the farm store. And on section 31.7.3, when it says hours of operation, the facility, it should say the farm store. And on section 31.7.6, when it says farm building, additionally on 31.7.7, that should also say farm building, not just building. And on 31.7.8, where it says just building, that should also say farm building. On 33.21.2, it should say farm store, not just store. And on 33.21.3, instead of the facility, it should say the farm store. And on 33.21.6, where it says farm building, likewise on 33.21.7, it should say farm building, not just building. And then they mentioned the conflict between 50 feet and 100 feet between 31.7.8 and 33.21.8. Question regarding the applicant must be a farmer. Sometimes the owners of the property are an LLC and not an individual. So I wonder if there could be some clarification as to being an individual filing as a farmer profession versus an LLC entity owning the property for legal reasons. In answer to a question posted earlier, USDA agricultural producer does not have to be noticed on your property, although many are USDA agricultural producers in order to participate in several USDA programs such as grants. And regarding 3321.2 or 3172, where it says that the store shall not exceed 2,000 square feet of retail area, I think it would be helpful to say dedicated retail area. And illustration of a question earlier, perhaps you have a historic dairy barn from the 1800s that is far over 3,000 square feet, but only the bottom floor is being used for a retail space. That would be a good example of a structure being larger than the retail space within the structure. I think we have many examples of that through our community. Regarding the hours of operation, knowing a certain farm in town that operates from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., there are going to possibly be some changes to daylight savings time, and there may be some change that closing period from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. that would be more in line with daylight is occurring and people want to harvest Christmas trees. Regarding the lighting, I think it would be important to say what IDA stands for. That is the International Dark Sky Association. And where it says shall be dark sky lighting, I think the more appropriate term is dark sky friendly lighting. Under 3321.5 or 3175 regarding parking, I think it should say parking shall be off-street provided on both of those. There was some mention from the Conservation Commission that one of the farms in town has some of their staff park off-street on neighborhood streets, and that was creating some consternation among some of the neighbors. Also on 3175, the previous application also referenced grass areas for parking. That was eliminated. I would like to see that retained. Certainly, I know of a farm that uses a lot of pasture and grass at certain times of the year to do their parking. Regarding the types of items that can be sold in a farm store, it does refer to just agricultural or horticultural products, but perhaps if a boulder was harvested from the farm fields and then carved up into a carving plate or a bowl, would that qualify? That occurs right now. How about a t-shirt or a mug of the entity so people can remember it or give it as a gift? Would that be allowed in a farm store? How about a cookbook or a children's reading book? I worked on the farm today. Would that be allowed? I think it should. Another question on 3177 or 3321.7 regarding a residential neighborhood at the buffer, the green belt. I don't know what a residential neighborhood definition is. Certainly, all of our farms are in residentially zoned areas. That's their right. So I'm not sure what the terminology of a residential neighborhood is versus it already being in a residential zone. Regarding garbage, yeah, garbage gets generated by a lot of businesses. I can tell you, we pick up a lot of garbage along the farm I work at. That's why you got more than $19,000 given to the city because of the number of nip bottles that ended up on our streets. And I get a lot. I don't see many wine bottles being thrown on the side of the road, I'll tell you that. And then regarding if a enterprise was to be in an off-site location, such as a commercial district to sell their produce, that would lose the opportunity to educate the public of how food is grown. When I can kneel down and look a child in the eyes and tell them that that white waxy material on a blueberry is bloom and educate them as how a blueberry grows, that's much more impactful to the next generation as to where food comes from than selling it in a glorified grocery store on a strip mall. And lastly, this is a very important proposal for the next generation because there are 2 young teenage girls in this town who have started flower operations, cut flower operations. And I think the more thoughtful you can be about the flexibility of our zoning to be in alignment with the opportunities for the next generation of farmers while respecting the rights and privacy needs of residential owners, I think is important for you to consider and come up with some compromises here. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Harbinson. Next person on the list, Deb Costa.
My name is Deborah.
Put the mic, there you go.
My name is
Much better.
Deborah Costa. I live at 133 Orange Drive, Shelton. Been a long time Shelton resident. I oppose the amendment, but I do support the farmers.
Thank you, Deb. Next person on the list is John. Can't make out the last name. Woods? Come on up.
Good evening, my name is John Woods, I live on 137 Village Drive. Had many issues with this. First of all, I totally disagree with putting a store, a residential neighborhood, call it whatever you want, but it's a store. As soon as you build the 2000, backtrack, I need you folks to decide and help me. Is it a 2,000 square foot building inside a 4,000 square foot building? That to me is still very confusing, and I do not have any answers to that. On top of this, when you put a 2,000 square foot building plus the outbuildings, which we discussed last week, the greenhouses, the tractor building, whatever other buildings there is going to be very little farming going on at this location. So these nice little stories about taking a little kid by the hand and showing you where the corn is growing has nothing to do with this proposal. This is a commercial store in a residential area. If you want to change the zoning rules, regulations, or laws, the entire town to satisfy one business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Next is Chris Carrera.
Hello. Hi, thank you for taking your time. Chris Carrera, 35 Station Drive. I'm going to just speak about some general thoughts and concerns I have. And I know some of the other residents are going to actually go through some comments and concerns they have on various aspects of the amendment itself. I know there were some comments that, the standards of the language seem acceptable. We'll be happy to point out why they're actually really incomplete, unclear, and really deficient to really read into. So what I really want to do is make it abundantly clear. This is not residents against farms, farmers farming. This is opposition to commercial activity being undertaken on residentially zoned property. This was a text amendment for a widget maker looking to build a widget store in an R1 ROA zone. You can sure I'd be up here just talking about I don't want a widget store in an R1 ROA zone. So there's lots of comments on how this isn't a commercial activity. I don't understand it to be commercial activity as defined by Law Insider, which is one of the leading sources for contract attorneys, defines it as any enterprise or venture by groups or individuals for the purpose of promoting or selling products and services to the general public, whether for profit or not. Right? I think the uses section pretty much sums up that's what's going on. I think we can dispel any myth that this isn't a commercial activity. And a commercial activity in a residential neighborhood is completely inappropriate. Again, to be crystal clear, my opposition would be no different if there was any other profession or any other activity sought to put a text amendment and place a store in R1 or so. We take a step back and we look at sort of where we've come from and where we are now. Ultimately, I think we see what we got. The amendment started out as something for a change to a farm stand, something nice, novel, quaint, something I think everybody can stand behind. Right. The first revision then changed it to now something a little more synonymous to a larger operation, a farm structure. And now the last revisions that we have a farm store, right? And in no context can I say, are we not at a place where this is a commercial activity? Commercial activities have no places in areas zoned for residential areas and are already specifically excluded for such zone parcels under Regulation Schedule A permitted uses 24 and 25, which address where stores can be located in the city. Allowing for this text amendment to go through would be complete reversal and set a precedent in the regulation on where stores are deemed appropriate to be operated. Simply placing the modifying word farm in front of the structure should soften or make it more palatable for acceptance by the city or be given any special type of consideration above and beyond what this actually is, a store. And where does this stop? We have the local artists congregate to draft a text amendment that specifically is tailored to them to allow for an art store in R1 zone so they can display and sell their locally produced artwork and produced on our local property they own, use to produce that art. What about the local craftsmen? Do they do the same construction and have a craft store? These are all noble industries that are unfortunately slowly losing prominence in the modern world. So that they automatically deserve special treatment as well. And if not, why the special treatment for some and not others? Store is inherently a store and has no place among residential homes in modern zoning, no matter what industry it would benefit, no matter what it sells, whether it's arts, crafts, or locally grown produce. Allowing farm stores in R1 zones would open the door for a flood of other industries to request similar text amendments for stores in residential neighborhoods. And the precedent for allowing such would be clearly set to be for the detriment of quiet city neighborhoods. How can the commission approve these for farms but deny for other local artisans who face similar hardships and challenges? Although having a store as a distribution network may be important to farmers in enhancing their business, it is clearly a separate and distinct activity from the business of farming. In other words, if a farmer doesn't have a store, the farmer can still engage in activity of farming. That's not going to be limited. Although I'm not a farmer, nor can I speak to the economics of running a farm, I have several clients who engage in farming as a business, none who have a farm store, all very successful. In fact, I venture to guess many farmers operate without having stores as part of their operations, though I cannot say that as a conclusive fact. Thus, if no stores exist, farming can still be carried on, and therefore would be inappropriate to give a separate classification and include it under Schedule A9, as recently put in this recent amendment. Stores of any kind should be strictly adhered to the already existing regulations under Schedule A. The regulations already govern their locations and made an important policy decision in the past that they should not intrude into areas zoned as residential. There's a reason stores are given separate classification is scrutiny, and this amendment would overturn such standing regulation. And looking further out to the future, what if this farm store gets approved and it fails? Or the farmer decides he no longer wants to engage in farming and wants to run the store? Maybe the next generation has no interest in farming. What is a potential exit strategy or remediation in these cases? Now we'll have a large vacant building with a retail store that is limited by the requirements set out here, which are already very restrictive. So that means only a few people can actually come into that property, purchase that property, and use the store as it's intended. All right, it's a self-serving requirement at the outset not only serves to burden and turn a building into a non-productive use. This in turn would force a residential neighborhood to be stuck with a vacant decayed store from that point forward. That would not be the case at a standard commercial retail setting where stores of any kind are best suited, and which could be flipped for another commercial venture in that same space. The fact there's no end game thought process under assumption this is a perpetual forever venture is short-sighted, and all the more reason this text amendment doesn't make sense. Other concerns we have in general, current roads may not be wide enough to accommodate it. My understanding is that this goes for special exceptions commission approval that would be addressed and taken into consideration. People are walking, running, pushing their babies in strollers, using the streets. If they don't have sidewalks, having the additional traffic here can certainly pose a danger. Concern over activities that can be conducted on the farm store that wouldn't be appropriate for R1 zone parcels should be specifically excluded in the text amendment, including but not limited to live music events, festivals, gatherings, marijuana dispensation, tobacco product distilling, commercial food preparation, slaughtering, and other items. None of these belong to residential neighborhoods. To be crystal clear, we, and nobody's been saying that we think the applicant or any of the farmers plan to engage in this now or in the future. But first, plans, circumstances, and opportunities change. And it could be possible that these could be sold or engaged by the applicant in the future, since these are not specifically banned or excluded in the text amendment. And second, since this is a change to the citywide rules, another potential farm store could potentially sell these items or engage in these activities, even if the applicant never does. Changes to citywide rules are dangerous because even the most benign changes for good reasons can produce unintended results and collateral damage when only one point is considered. Furthermore, the regulations already contain exclusionary language for prohibited activities of farms under 45.7. Alternative to a text amendment exclusion, the regulations could be updated to reflect the exclusion of these activities under code sections and address these items and concerns. More concerns, just the peaceful use and enjoyment of property, concerns with the emergency interruption with emergency services on busy times of the year. Some of these properties, especially in the White Hills area, surround the White Hills Fire Department. The traffic and congestion, potential parking on side streets could potentially hamper and delay response times. Traffic studies, again, we'd be interested if there were traffic studies done as part of any sort of review process. And finally, one point I want to make is question and comments are frequently getting posed to Attorney Bellis on various hypotheticals, what if scenarios, and his responses are frequently centered around the applicant, what you plan to do or not do. Although this is insightful this line of probing is incomplete, this should not be the approach of standard review. This is a change to the citywide regulations. Although what the applicant may or may not do provides a baseline frame of reference, it only provides insight for a specific purpose. It said what could be done by anyone in any conceivable form is important since this change has a broad impact across the entire city and not just one particular farm or future farmland purpose. Unanswered questions or no responses on various what ifs, hypotheticals, potential exploited loopholes that are rife throughout this text is concerning and display the lack of thought in this construction of this amendment, which leads credence to our comments and concerns that we've been expressing all these months. For example, it was a simple question of how big of a building to be. I understand that the acre size, but may impact the size of the building, but I'm pretty sure it was 8,000 square feet was what was mentioned last time at the meeting pretty quickly. There's been a lot of dodging of questions. I think it's inappropriate. The building's could be a big building. It could potentially be a big building. In terms of the climate change argument and how it benefits, well, if we're going to have a potentially large building taking up farmland, that doesn't also include the ingress and egress into the property. It also doesn't include the parking space. You're eliminating a significant amount of space that could be used for farming and growing crops. If it was a pure climate change benefit, that you should be taking this into consideration, that you're actually taking away a significant amount of farmland that can be used for farming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carrera. Next is Joe Costa.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Costa. I live on 133 Village Drive. I appreciate the commission's time in this matter, and I ask that you vote and oppose this amendment. I do oppose this. I want to talk to the requirements section of the amendment. I'm going to read off what I have written down here. It's easier for me to tell you. The requirements section added as part of this text amendment creates a web of vagary that will need clarification as to who will check the requirements, when they will check the requirements, how often the requirements will be checked, and what happens if requirements are not met after initially meeting them. Who's going to monitor this to ensure conformity? Independent annual certification at the cost of the farm store. Self-certification rarely works unless it is added in a city audit. And penalty component. Without punitive teeth, what is the cost of non-compliance? Just because you qualify 1 year does not mean you qualify every year. Do you just need to qualify in the year you seek to build a store? Who is going to make sure this is being met? And what happens if there's a year that it is not met? Without punitive teeth, what is the cost of non-compliance? What if the farming activity is held in an entity so that no Schedule F on the 1040 file? Those farmers cannot do this even though this is supposedly for the benefit of the broad farming community. Active farming activities for small farmers can be conducted through corporations or partnerships for limited liability protection or tax planning reasons. They would not be filing a Schedule F under 1040 and would be prohibited from taking advantage of having a farm store. Yet this is supposed to benefit all farmers. What about a developer who has a small passive farming activity, including as part of his or her tax return, that is incidental to his livelihood? So he qualifies for this simply because he has a Schedule F in his return? The language is rife with loophole exploitation. Imagine a scenario where you can have a landowner of a PA 490 property, but not a farmer, who leases to a farmer to qualify under 33-21-1 when the building is constructed. What happens if the tenant farmer leaves or gets kicked out? And now we have a property, the building that is without now meeting the requirements under 33-20.21.1. Does the building get shut down for operations? Who monitors this? What happens if this occurs? Seems like this is a loophole that can easily be navigated through to get around the requirement rules. There should be a public disclosure requirement of tax returns similar to 501c3. Charitable organizations, when presented with strict conformity guidelines. One of the trade-offs of the 501c tax exempt status and the preferred treatment is the tax returns are made available for public inspection to ensure they are fact conforming with the strict rules and regulations they must operate under. Should farmers' tax returns then be posted to P&Z site annually for public inspection to ensure conformity if they are going to be given preferred treatment? If not, the similar team exists. How does this get monitored for conformity to the requirements? How do you prevent fraud? Anyone can download a Schedule F and simply include in it that their tax return presented as part of application process. You have to instead get certified tax returns copies provided by the IRS then, similar to what banks must do as part of loan application processes. So clearly, there's something to think about this conformity. Who's going to be checking all this stuff? I want to talk about the size. The tax amendment now significantly changes the size of the buildings and acres on which they can be on. The breadth of all land now open for farm stores has significantly been expanded. Previously, it was only on acres in excess of 10 acres. Now all R1 zone property in excess of 5 acres can potentially build a farm store, opening up more existing neighborhoods now for intrusion. The reasoning was now it conforms to the minimum lot size in the regulations. But this is just a minimum requirement. The minimum for this purpose could be increased above it like the initial 10 acres proposed. If this amendment should be deemed to fall within Schedule A, permitted use section, why does a farm store get special acreage treatment relative to acreage requirements that are currently in the rules for similar farm structures under number 9? For example, for farm wineries, regulations 45.10.1 requires a minimum of 10 acres. At a minimum, the amendment is inconsistent with existing rules on the books for similar farming structures and operations in the proposed same Schedule A section. These clearly show minimums can be escalated up to higher acreage levels. The text amendment now states the farm store shall not exceed 2,000 square feet of retail area in a farm building if the land is less than 10 acres and 3,000 if it's more than 10 acres. This is misleading in that it conceals the true size of the building that could actually be constructed, since the existing regulations of R1 zones will still govern maximum sizes. Thus, on a 10-acre property, based on comments from the last public meeting, an 8,000 square foot farm building could be built on the property as long as no more than 3,000 square feet is used for retail space. This retail area will not include storage, kitchens, loading docks for delivery trucks, processing areas, whatever. Are there limitations to the quantity of support buildings built on the lot? The text amendment still does not address one of the initial issues with the size requirement. Is the land limited to just one building up to the square footage allotment? Can there be multiple buildings that aggregate that up to the square footage, or can there be unlimited buildings up to the square footage? Even if addressed throughout patchwork from other parts of the regulations, it should be clarified here to leave no doubt. Given the sensitivity to the area being residentially zoned property, existing pre-regulation buildings should be counted towards the maximum square footage requirements. We all know there's several buildings on this property already. It's conceivable there could be substantial existing buildings already on the property that can also be used in conjunction with the store space for related purposes, storage, production, etc. Thus, the number and total size of buildings in residential zone property can be quite significant if a new building of the proposed size allowed can be added into existing structures. That's enough. So I thank you for your time again, and I hope you guys turn this down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costa, for coming tonight. Next, Porter McKinnon.
Porter McKinnon, 945 Constitution Boulevard North. Most of what I had planned to say has already been said, so I'm going to cut this a little bit short. Just want to let you know that I met with Mr. Monahan for the first time this morning. Seems like a really nice guy, very hard worker, and I hope to get to know him better in the future. I talked a lot with him. He answered every question I had, and most of his answers were very reasonable. Well, he does not intend to build a giant store that's visible from the street, or to have excessive seasonal traffic, or long hours, or concerts, or many other things that the residents would be opposed to this document doesn't prevent him or anyone else from doing those things. What is not specifically excluded could be included at some point. I just want to be clear. I'm not opposed to the farmers of Shelton. I'm not opposed to the Monahans specifically. I'm opposed to the language as it's written to change the definition of the farm store. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Next is, I can't quite make out the first name, but the last name is Corona. Just put the microphone down.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Nurse Corona, and I reside at 55 Woodwood Place. I oppose this amendment, and there's a lot of concerns that we have. I'll read a few things that we put together. We're concerned about the uses. The narrative movement throughout the meeting and amendments, is this to save the local farms from disappearing? Or is this application done out of concern for saving and preserving the local farms as a whole? The 50% of the revenue sourced from the premises, is the 50% sourced from the premises or the Shelton producers strike as a woefully low bar given what is supposedly advocating? If the purpose is to help save the local farm, a much higher percentage will be appropriate to ensure farm stores are carrying local products to promote local farms. Similar to the requirements comments, how does the 50% benchmark, or any benchmark at all, get monitored and confirmed? And what is the penalty if the benchmark is not met at any particular year? The 50% benchmark is a nice little added feature on paper without any teeth for non-compliance or path to monitor compliance. Again, standards are being imposed without any guidance as to who will check the 50% benchmark. When will they check the benchmark? How often will be checked? And what happens if the benchmark is not met in any particular year? We're also concerned about the buffer. A 20-foot buffer of green space is highly inadequate, given the store will be amongst a residential neighborhood and adjacent to residential homes. Buffers of green space should be increased significantly in order to provide utmost care to not disrupt the audio, visual, and olfactory enjoyment of adjacent neighborhoods with the commercial activity being conducted. Another concern of ours is the setback. If this amendment should be deemed to fall within Schedule 8, Number 9, permitted use section, why should a farm store have a different setback and accessibility requirements that are currently the rules for similar farm structures under Number 9? For example, under 45.10.2 and 45.10.3, farm wineries should be accessibly directly from a designated state highway or within a 500 feet of said highway on a road deemed adequate and acceptable. At a minimum, the amendment is inconsistent with the existing rules in the books for similar farming structures and operations in the proposed same Schedule 8 section. There's no reason setbacks should not conform to prior precedents and policy decided to be fair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next person on the list is Dawn Mosier.
Hi, my name is Dawn Moser. I live at 137 Village Drive. I'm a long-time resident of the White Hills. I want to say that I oppose this for all the reasons you've heard, but especially for the health and safety of our residents and of any resident in Shelton this might impact in the future. I have two questions. One is if 50% of the products being sold are going to be locally sourced, what are the other 50%? And second of all, you mentioned 4 farmers who meet the criteria who live in Shelton. What about farmers who live outside of Shelton coming in to buy property and use this amendment to do a similar commercial property? Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Next is Augusto Baya.
My name is Bahia. I live 142 Village Drive. I'm not against the farmers, that's where the food comes, all be, you gotta eat. But what I don't agree is building in a residential area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the list is Patrick Riddle.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Riddle. I live on 2 Morgan Court in Shelton. Thank you for the commission taking the time to take our questions. We appreciate it. We know it's voluntary. Thanks. To avoid repetition, I will not rehash a lot of the issues that I have with this amendment. I oppose it. Obvious reasons. Putting retail commercial space in residential areas is somewhat ridiculous. I don't know why we're discussing it, but just from a farmer perspective, that area has been farmed since I lived there. For 16 years, there's been crops grown there. Nobody had a problem with it. And if we were talking about a farm stand, like say Guy's Eco Stand, I don't think any of us would have a problem with that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about a very impactful commercial operation that is in a very congested area already, with a 3-way stop that could have 30 to 40 cars lined up each way at certain times of the day, early in the morning, or when ball games get out on East Village Road. And this is highly impactful to the area. It's also directly impacts some of the residents that live in that area. Very, very, very bad. And everyone in general is going to be impacted by it. So again, to avoid repetition, I just want to cover that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the last person that has signed up is Brenda Woods.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Woods, and I live at 51 Wabuda Place. And I thank you for this opportunity to share some thoughts with you. Just be clear that I am opposed to this change for various reasons. One thing that was pointed out already, and I'm not going to try to repeat it, but just to reiterate some things about the time that this store is supposed to be operating from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. doesn't clarify whether or not that's the actual opening of the store or their operations and activities before then, and the same for at the end of the day, 7 p.m. Also, right now they have at the current location music events every Saturday from 12 to 3 p.m., which that could be carried over into this new location, which would be a disturbance to our neighborhood. Also, the current operation where they are now have fewer hours of operation. And so I don't know why they're trying to expand it at where we are, at the new location. It's also not clear what facility represents. It seems to be interchangeable with farm building and the facility. When you talk about the actual store, how much bigger is the actual facility going to be? In addition to that, are there going to be farm animals at that location, at this new location? Will there be early morning activities with tractors and farm equipment and so forth and so on? Because nothing has been said about what else is going to be at that location besides the farm store. Because if it's open to the operations of a farm store, does that also mean that any type of farm operation, including livestock, would be permitted there? And if so, how much? Because that poses another issue, which is the actual health and well-being of the residents. And I do have articles that I would like to submit to the committee, which talks about studies that have been done to neighboring populations where there is farm, like where there's farm with livestock being taken care of there. And part of those health risks include respiratory issues to children and older people like myself, which can become very serious. And so we don't know how many animals would be at this location. So that's another issue in addition to everything else that other people have talked about. And I don't want to minimize the possibility of devaluing our properties because of living near a facility like this. And I want to submit information, studies that have been done that shows that living near farms, commercial buildings can devalue a property to the point where we would be selling much less than what we purchased the property for. And so I have 3 articles that I would like to submit to you. One talks about animal operations and residential property values. The other one talks about, is living near a farm bad for your health? And then the third one is, what are the pros and cons of living next to a farm? And just to highlight some of the cons, bad smells, more rodents, bad for people with allergies. Farms produce lots of dust, can be noisy. More snakes possibly. Houses are harder to sell. Mud on the roads, noisy farm equipment, early starts and late finishes. More flies, just to name a few things. Thank you very much, and I hope that you consider that you understand that we're not against farmers making a living, but we also have to consider our life and how this affects us. Had this been considered years ago before a residential neighborhood was created, then this would not probably be an issue. But since we are there, our needs, our health and well-being also needs to be considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You could hand the articles to Mr. Rossetti. That's everyone that has signed up. Is there anyone else that would care to address the commission on this particular application? All right, sir, sign your name, please. Just log in. Thank you. Anyone else? We'll be moving on after this particular gentleman. Sir? Yeah, go ahead. Here's the pen. Wait. I don't want to see it. Guess I'm with my arms are only too long. All right, so we have Peter Marciano. Okay.
Thank you. Peter Marciano, 15 East Village Road. First of all, thank everybody for being here, because that sends a huge message to me. I don't care what side of the aisle.
Address your comments up here. Okay.
I don't care what side of the aisle anybody is here for, but I think that I have to acknowledge the fact it's great that everyone is here. Because it means they care. I think especially the last few years, we've seen what's been lost in this town. And I don't think the irony is missed on the city council or zoning that this was all farmland for decades, centuries prior before these houses being built, prior before the neighborhood becoming what it is. I support the farm stand. I support local farming. A lot of hearsay was set up here, a lot of what if this and what if that. And all of that doesn't make any sense, because in everything I've read and everything I've seen, farms that, communities that support farming and live near farms, the property value usually only does one thing, and that is increase the surrounding neighbors. I think that the bigger picture is Shelton has an opportunity here to make a statement, stand up for open space, stand up for the farmers, and ultimately increase the tax base and increase property values. The traffic issue on East Village Road, I get it. I completely understand it. But nothing has been done about that traffic forever. And putting a farm stand there, I don't see it as an issue to make things worse. But like I said, we have an opportunity to make significant change to affect this city, and actually the opportunity to preserve a little bit of what we have left. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marciano. And we have Douglas Woods.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Douglas Woods, and I live at 51 Wapoo Place. We moved here in 2006, 2007, Wapoo area. And I just want the council to know that I am opposed to the farm stand or farm store being put at this location. I'm not opposed to farming because we need the farms to eat. I believe that the farm stand itself, the store, I believe that a better location can be set for a farm store, that a better area where there's more traffic that passes by a farm store would be better off of 110. I think that Bridgeport Avenue, I think that there is a better place for the store. If the farm stand people want to, they want to continue farming the lot with the fruits and vegetables that they have going in now, I think that that would be fine. But to add a commercial building there for people to come there to buy and sell, I think that it's not the correct neighborhood for that kind of activity. So I personally am opposed to a farm stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. All right, we do have people waiting to address the commission via Zoom and potentially by phone. So last call for anybody in the audience. Okay, Mr. Rossetti, is there anybody participating by Zoom that's indicated they would like to address the commission? How many people do you have?
The first person is Vince.
Okay, for the first person has been identified as Vince please state your full name and address, and if you do have a unusual last name, please spell it for the benefit of our stenographer.
Sure, will do. Thank you. My name is Vince O'Brien, 153 Village Drive. I want to thank the commission for a lot of the questions raised today, and particularly the audience as well. Certain questions I have, again, go back to the size of the location. Again, there's no minimum mentioned within the new regulation for what the 2,000 square foot store would cover. So we know that it could be subdivided further from a 10-acre site, as an example, unless spelled out within the regulation. Also, how much is dedicated to actual farming? If we're talking about a particular site where a lot of the land is not arable and is not usable for, except for the store and maybe a small part for farming, how much will qualify for this particular regulation? Then the other part, I think one of the pieces that's really interesting is the uses section. And again, I reiterate some of the comments about the 50% revenue scale being quite low on that. There's also several exemptions in here that I think should be brought up. It's 50% of revenues produced on premises or from Shelton farmers, agricultural craft producers. That could simply mean that a Shelton farmer who owns land in Oxford or anywhere else is using this store for selling of that particular piece, that particular produce. It's not being used from Shelton farms. So I think a better wording on that would be, first, a higher percentage of revenue, plus identifying that the produce or the product is from Shelton farms, not necessarily the Shelton farmers. So that we, if we're talking that it's important for the town, that we reiterate that the town is doing this. Second piece, I do not see a prohibition on anything regarding animal slaughter within a residential area. It was confirmed at a meeting this week that poultry is slaughtered at the current Stone Gardens, and that there is no prohibition that it could not be done here, especially within the building that would be adjacent to the proposed retail store. And to put any kind of slaughtering within a residential area will have a detrimental effect, as mentioned by some of the past people speaking today, but in terms of smells, desirability for the neighborhood, potential health reasons. I think that also needs to be done. There's also no prohibition on anything further that could be slaughtered on site. So that is also missing within the regulation. In general, I again am no objection to the farm, no objection to the store. I don't find it a particular benefit to the town that we have the ability for children to particularly touch produce, as opposed to what the detrimental effect will be to the various people within the neighborhood. So those are my points on that particular point. And in general, I am opposed to a commercial retail store being injected next to residential properties for this. And in general, I think as just an observation, I think we've gone over this regulation several times now, and a lot of the questions that have been raised by both the commission and by the residents of the town seem to, again, not be listed within the regulation. I think it's very important that, as mentioned by one of the earlier speakers, that who monitors the revenue piece there, and what is the penalty if that's not achieved? And what is the penalty if it's not from a Shelton farm or farmers? Putting a regulation in where there is no compulsion to comply with it, it invites either disuse, disrespect to the law, disrespect to regulation. And I have a serious problem with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Rossetti, who's the next person, please? All right, with the gentleman named Sam, please identify yourself, complete name and address. Thank you. Is there a gentleman named Sam who indicated that they would like to address the commission? Okay, could be a woman, I'm sorry. As in Samantha. Or...
You hear me okay?
Now we can. All right,
Thank
sir,
you.
your full name and address, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sam Shah. I live at 5 Morgan Court in Shelton. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to raise our concerns against this zoning amendment and change. I do not oppose the farmers, but I strongly oppose the commercializing this area and disturbing the peace. I agree with most of the comments made against this amendment. My current experience with zoning and planning commission is not great. House built to my house, next to my house, was not monitored and not
Sir, you need
adhered.
to address the.
I'm coming to that.
It's on the table here, okay?
Yep. Not
Right.
adhere to the zoning regulations. I raised the complaint and nothing was done. So how do we trust zoning and planning commission to monitor these construction activities in this particular area? And what will happen? And it will change and it will remain in compliance in future. Do the zoning and planning and zoning commission have staff and teeth to oversee that it will not become a nuisance in future? What if there is another amendment to this text to suit the new owners when the current focus die down? How frequently the R1 zoning change can be done? Is there a 10-year freeze period? Is town benefiting from increased tax basis? Why this change? Are residents happy with this? Why are we doing this? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Shaw, I just want to confirm, you said your address is 5 Morgan Court?
Yes, correct.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rossetti, to who we have, who's next? Attorney Thomas? Okay. Attorney Thomas, you have the floor.
Yes, Attorney Dominic Thomas, going to Thomas 350 Main Street, Derby, Connecticut, representing a property owner who owns a parcel of land that is farmed and that might qualify under this ordinance. He has asked me to speak on behalf of the ordinance and to point out a couple of points, which I will be brief since I have the next three items on the agenda. I do want to point out that I think that when you're looking at totally what is happening throughout the state with respect to the move to protect farms and to preserve our farms, those people who think that farmers can survive by having a little farm stand in the front and selling their products seasonally are misinformed terribly. And it's that kind of belief that has caused a lot of farms to grow houses instead of crops. I would point out to someone that these parcels of land that are in Shelton, these parcels of land that are being farmed right now, you don't want them to grow, whether it's single family or even multifamily homes or anything of that nature. You want them to stay as farms. And this, by the way, what you're doing is a baby step towards what is being done in other communities that are considering with limitations, agritainment regulations, where they will allow farms to have fairs, allow farms to have weddings and other things to supplement their income and to protect it. And the final thing I will close with, there's a lot of people that talked about, there's one person that talked about, living near a farm. Keep in mind that I don't think Shelton has a right to farm ordinance, but it doesn't need to have it because statute 19A-341 is the statute that protects agricultural and farming operations. So if the property that they're looking at is farmed, if it has livestock, if it has odors, if it has deer guns going off at 6 a.m, and things happening late in the night, if it has chemicals being used properly on the farm, none of that constitutes an ordinance, a nuisance, and none of that can be used as a complaint. And the people really need to look and read 19A-341, which protects farmers and which points out, as someone I think did, farms are a commercial operation. They are not bucolic. but they are a business. But we want to keep them in business. And this regulation, which I think is overly not overly restrictive, is restrictive enough, but is a baby step towards protecting farms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Thomas. If there's anyone else participating by Zoom that has not already used the raise your hand feature to indicate that they would like to address the commission, please do so at this time. Is there anyone else? Okay, and is there anyone that would like to participate through the phone link? No. All right, so last call for anyone who may be participating through the phone link to indicate that they would like to address the commission by dialing *9. Okay, so seeing that public has had the opportunity to address the commission, now we go back to the applicant and Attorney Bellis, do you want to remark on any comments from the public this evening?
Yes, and I'll be brief because I know you've
Okay.
been here a long time on this hearing. But while it's fresh in my mind, if you don't mind, I'll just go over a few points.
Okay.
First, Alderman Simonetti, notice is given for text amendments, not by a mailing, but by a legal publication in a newspaper or on the web page. However, if there were a special exception, then the applicant would be required to do mailings to adjoining property owners and maybe people within 200 feet. So if this were going to go for a special exception, neighbors would get something in the mail, but they don't for a text amendment. I think that what Attorney Thomas said is also my sentiment. Toll Brothers built a subdivision on what was Wabuda farmland. And now they're saying, you know, oh, well, we have these nice houses, and they do. But it was on farmland. And the same thing will happen for all the other farms in White Hills if we cannot help support the farmers. These farmers will sell to developers. And Shelton White Hills will no longer look like the Shelton White Hills that we know. It will be subdivisions all over the place, apartment buildings, whatever. So it's kind of ironic that a lot of the people that complained about this text amendment are people that have a subdivision built on Wabuda farmland and now have houses there. But I guess that's the irony in the way we live today. Mr. Harbinson asked, will farm stands still be allowed? Yes, they will. That's under section 10, and I've changed section 9. The site plan has been replaced by the special exception, so there's no more site plan. That's not on the table. It was felt that the commission wanted more say, and so we have the more restrictive special exception. I'm not going to go through some of the wording changes that were suggested. I can tell you very quickly that a single member LLC is a disregarded entity by the IRS. They don't consider it an entity, and you do file a 1040 tax return. The big question, and I might as well answer while everyone's listening, is how do you enforce zoning regulations? What if the person stops selling Shelton produce? We have a zoning enforcement officer that regulates all of the zoning regulations in our town. So if someone is not complying with a zoning regulation, the zoning enforcement officer issues a cease and desist order that makes that person stop doing, in this case, selling at the store. If it's not complied with within 10 days, there could be a fine of $100 a day. And so there are mechanisms in place now for zoning enforcement officers to regulate whether someone is, quote, cheating or not complying with the regulation. So I don't have to put that in the regulation. We already have it. There was a lot of talk about farm animals and slaughtering and all that. It's already in our regulations. It's under 45, 21.7. I don't need to put it in the farm store application because it's already there. You could already, the regulations already tell us when you can have animals and when you cannot. So that's not something. I did like Vince's comment about changing the word farmers to farms in 21.6. And I think that was an appropriate correction that I'll make. Some of the other corrections that Mr. Harbison suggested, I can take up with Tony Panico that we often do in the administration of the, cleaning up the language. So that would, I'm not going to take the commission's time on that. But again, I think that a lot of the people that criticize this text amendment live in a particular neighborhood or may have fears about a particular application. But let me remind the commission, in 5 days, 670 people signed a petition saying, why wouldn't you want to have a farm store on a farm? And I can't think of any reasons why you wouldn't. Those are the comments that I've heard. In 5 days, 670 people. They don't all come to these kinds of hearings, as you know. So you're not going to hear, you're only hearing complaints from a small minority of people, whereas the vast majority of people, I think, would be in favor of this text amendment. But I think the question you have to ask yourselves are, do we want a town that has no more farms, where the farmers and landowners sell to developers? If the answer to that is yes, then why am I bothering with this text amendment? And why are we bothering to help farmers? If the answer that you all want is yes, we like our farms, we like the way they look, we like what they add to the community that some communities do not have, then you have to look at creative ways, new ways of allowing these people to keep these farms. Attorney Thomas said it was a baby step. I'm having trouble with the baby step, Dominic. I don't know how I'm going to get to the big steps. But the answer is that this is a planning commission, not just zoning, it's a planning commission. And we're trying to plan, or you are trying to plan, to keep these farms. And what the farmers are saying is we need income to keep these operations going. And in order to do that, we are requesting the opportunity to come before you with a proposal that you would have to approve that could help supplement our income of what, and it's very clear, it's agricultural products that are being sold. We're not selling vacuum cleaners. We're not selling bicycles. We're not it's produce. And I don't know how I could make that any clearer than I've done. So yes, you've heard complaints for an hour and a half, no, maybe 2 hours, but you didn't hear the 670 people that are like, what are these people, nuts? Why wouldn't you want this in your town? So I can't speak for all 670 of them, but I can tell you they're out there, and I can tell you the farmers need help. And I can tell you that I, for one, over the years, have tried my best to make the farmers happy so that they keep their farms, whether it be a Jones farm or whether it be a Beardsley winery or distillery, whatever it may be, or a Monahan produce store. I think Shelton White Hills is beautiful. I used to live there in that area. We have pumpkins, we have all kinds of things up there, and let's keep it that way. So that is the purpose of this text amendment. You have the right, and you will have the right, to explore an application in detail under the special exception application. And all the issues that were raised by these neighbors will be addressed more appropriately at that time. And that's the right place to do it, because then you could look at the details. So I really hope that you approve this text amendment. And then when it comes to hearing a special exception, we can focus in on any particular problems to alleviate a neighborhood issue. No one wants to have problems with their neighbors. I can promise you that. Not the farmers, not the lawyers, nobody. So this is just a text amendment. It's just kind of a basis of how you file an application. That's all it is. Thank you all. And I know there's other applications, so I will conclude with that.
Thank you. All right, before we move on, do any commissioners have any questions for Attorney Bellis? Okay, hearing none. Any other questions from the commission at this time? Mr. Panico, do you have any comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Seeing that there are no other comments from the commission, what is the commission's preference? Would you want to continue the public hearing or close it? So let me go through and poll the commission. Commissioner Kelly?
I think it's time to close.
Close, okay. Commissioner Parkins?
Close.
Commissioner Tiki?
Close.
Commissioner Motto?
Close.
Commissioner Laskos?
Close.
Okay, and the chair would agree with my fellow commissioners. So seeing that there's consensus to close the public hearing, is there a commissioner who would like to move that motion?
I'll move the motion.
Okay, there is a Commissioner Kelly is moving the motion to close the public hearing for application 2204. Is there a second?
Commissioner Parkins will second.
Commissioner Parkins is seconding. So on the motion to close the public hearing made by Commissioner Kelly, seconded by Commissioner Parkins, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Tiki?
Aye.
Commissioner Motto?
Aye.
Commissioner Laskos?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Parkins?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion to close public hearing has been passed by a vote of 6-0. And this item will be on the agenda of an upcoming commission meeting for discussion. So we're moving on to our next agenda item. And but before we do so, why don't we take a 5-minute recess to allow anyone who needs to exit the auditorium to do so? Yes. I want to stand up and stretch. So, yeah, 8:02.
Just got a 5-minute recess to go to the back.
Sweet Billy.
Do my pen.
Alex, you ready?
Do you like this screen or the other screen better? This one shows everybody.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to reconvene at 8:12 p.m. Next item on the agenda is the continuation of the public hearing for application 2210, Dominic Thomas for a text change of section 34.3.4 of the Shelton zoning regulations to allow the commission to consider higher floor area ratio, also known as FAR, developments for PDD applications on Bridgeport Avenue. Public hearing for this application opened June 29th, 2022. Posted on the city's website is the zone text amendment for section 34.3.4. Mr. Rossetti, were there any other items, materials, reports, correspondence received within the time period that need to be acknowledged? No. Okay. Attorney Thomas, you are representing the applicant, so please identify yourself for the record and proceed. Could you
Yes, I
please?
am. Attorney Dominic Thomas, Cohen & Thomas, 315 Main Street, Dover, Connecticut, representing the applicant.
Okay,
After
Attorney Thomas,
Yeah.
let me start. Could you just explain the revised site plans?
A site plan.
Site
Oh, I'm
plan.
sorry. I'm sorry. No, I'm reading the wrong section. Go ahead.
Okay, well, what I did,
Folder.
if I could screen share, I took to heart some of the comments that were made last time. And let's see if I can get to the right. Okay. Here we go. All right. Hopefully you can see this. This was supposed to have two things, but there were comments made that rather than leave it up to your own discretion, and I do want to begin by saying one thing. The PDDs are zone changes. So you have the discretion anyway. So the option that we talked about, which was the option that was below the or before I screwed up Adobe, was simply for you to delete this section. I've made an application. You could just delete it. You don't need it in there because you can make a determination every time an application comes before you anywhere in the town to determine if the floor area ratio is appropriate for the site and the neighborhood. However, there were some comments that rather than leaving it to discretion, you would prefer only to simply keep the same regulation, which gave you discretion in the CBD area, but instead of 0.8, move it to a higher figure, 1.25, which gives you a little more discretion and gives you a definitive number. 1.25 accommodates the application that this was drafted for, which is about 1.1 or something like that is the area. It would also accommodate another application that I just filed. But I will point out to you that, for example, this regulation would not in any way, shape, or form accommodate the Renaissance. I don't know how the Renaissance got passed with the regulation, but the Renaissance is on a relatively small lot, and it's a 16-story, 17-story building. So it fits in perfectly to that area, but it would not have complied with it. So I think considering whether you want to eliminate it entirely is something you should do. The comments, based on the comments last time, I just showed you what it would look like if you just simply took the 0.8 and made it 1.25. If you look at your Schedule B, you can see a good many of them are 0.8. However, and when you get into the industrial zones, you have some that go as high, you have at least one or two to go as high as 1.5. So that is just simply in response to the comments. I do think, I stress again that PDDs are zone text changes, and this commission has exercised its discretion very well over the years. And again, there's no precedent or anything of that nature in a zone change. So you can either choose to just increase it to 1.25 or choose to eliminate entirely.
Okay, do any commissioners have any questions for Attorney Thomas?
Now, are we discussing this now or are we just?
This is just questions for the updated information that Attorney Thomas just presented.
Okay.
I just have a response to Attorney Thomas's comment about he's not sure how the Renaissance got built. I believe there's a lot of folks that don't understand how that got built. But I would remind you that none of the folks on the current commission were on the commission. When
Exactly. I wasn't challenging the attorney. I'm just saying that very often floor area ratio, when proposals are made, it's something that's ignored. I'll be honest with you. I've had to say to engineers when they're doing the PDD statement of uses and standards, what is the floor area ratio? And I sometimes I get a blank stare. I said, I need to know the total number of square footage of the entire building. And there are some of them that when these regulations that are older buildings on pieces of land that are pre-existing non-conforming because
I just wanted to defend my comrades, that's all.
Okay.
All right. Attorney Thomas.
Right, I have a question. So
wait a minute, Commissioner Amato, one of the things that I'm looking at is what was posted to the city's website under this application, and what is up on the screen is different.
What is on the screen is a response to a comment from one of the commissioners. I believe it may have been Commissioner Parkins, which was, why don't we just change the number? Why don't we just increase the number and have a definitive number?
Right, this is what we should be acting on.
No. You have the right to approve, deny, or modify. So all I've done is giving you a suggestion as to how it could be modified in terms in line with the comment that was made.
All right.
And modification would also involve eliminating the entire section.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm just going to request that staff, if they don't already have a copy of this, please make sure that it's shared with the commission, because this is the first I've seen of this, and I think we did.
This one.
We have the previous one.
It's very simple to understand. If you go back to what was submitted, ignore the red printing and change 0.80 to 1.25. That's all it is.
Yeah, I was comparing and it looked that way.
When was this continued?
Yeah, it's your exact same regulation that exists right now with just the change of the 0.8 to 1.25.
Okay, all right. I would like to see updated clean copy, however. So anything else, Attorney Thomas?
No, I have nothing further.
All right, so do any commissioners have any questions for Attorney Thomas?
I do. I just wonder what the history, if you know, what the history of this FAR regulation, what it came from, what the purpose of it was. I'm just wondering if something meets the setback requirements and doesn't exceed standard heights of buildings. What was the purpose of this kind of restriction?
If I can interject a little bit.
Sure.
Some of this goes back to when we rewrote the entire section 34 in an attempt to further tighten it and gain the confidence, if you will, of the people that didn't understand it to begin with. And what we did at that time was we put in an outside limit of a floor area ratio of 80%, because for the nature of the development that we were experiencing at that time, that seemed to handle it. It's incongruous in the context of a PDD being something that gives the commission absolute control over every single facet of it, whether it's the height, the mass of it, the coverage on the ground, the number of stories, etc. And what we did in that regulation, we artificially put a limitation on floor area ratio. And I think some of that was in reaction to the concern that we might use PDDs out in residential areas. And if that happened, you don't want to get them to be too big or too high or too bulky.
Mr. Panica, what was the section that you're referring to? Is it
That-
section
the
34.3?
paragraph that's being requested to be amended, paragraph
Okay,
34.3.
34.3.4. Okay.
Correct. Just to, and one thing that was pointed out in our last hearing, there was some confusion over lot coverage versus floor area ratio. Just to make it very simple, lot coverage is the ratio of the building coverage to the lot area. In other words, you take the footprint of the building and you divide that by the lot area, and that gives you lot coverage.
Yeah, I got that. I mean, I get it.
In contrast to that, the floor area ratio is the ratio of the total area of all the floors of the building
Right.
divided by the lot area.
Yeah, got that.
That's the two distinctions.
It seems like having the lower number would favor, one-story buildings, which aren't always,
Oh, no, not really.
well, not too many floors.
It favors smaller buildings, yes.
Right.
It takes what it has done back when the changes were made to section 34 in response to the Campion case. A lot of the developments of PDD were on large lots. As you have evolved as a commission, I think it was subsequent to that you changed it to add the PDDs in the CBD zone in the downtown district for you to have discretion because the lots were small. And
Right.
obviously they greatly exceeded. What's happening now is when you are going to have PDDs come before you with your zone changes that are going to be on different size lots in different areas, different commercial areas, because you can't have PDDs totally surrounded by residential zones. So you have that protection. So it's just your flexibility allows you to look at it individually and say, no, I think that's too massive for the site. But here, again, the other option is just to increase the number to 1.25. And I think what this was done for, the access road site is a prime example, a site that you want to get developed that is currently in relatively rough shape, that's been approved for self-storage, that now has a self-storage application, and it slightly exceeds, it's like 1.1, something like that, at 1.12.
The only reason we ever get into a problem with floor area ratios are those unique types of uses where there is a very low parking requirement, such as the self-storage. They don't need much room for parking. They just need a big building to create storage areas in.
So Tony, this is Commissioner Parkins. We have over 100 PDDs? Why has this never been an issue before? Why is this an issue right now? I don't understand.
Well, we've never in the past had many PDDs that involve self-storage.
So this is specific to
It should have been
self-storage?
before us. It should have been before us on a couple of applications that apparently slipped by. I'm not going to get into detail on the Renaissance because that's part of a major complex area with interrelated and inter-shared parking facilities and trying to calculate it theoretically on the postage stamp lot that it was sitting on. If you limited it to just that, you were going to have a horrendous number. However, also there's one or two others, as Attorney Thomas pointed out to us, where it must not have been looked at because it doesn't meet the standard, it exceeds the standard. I think one that was cited was the apartment development that AJ built over next to that senior living facility.
Right. Yeah, that was a unique issue because when you did floor area ratio based on the entire PDD included everything and not just the separate lot. So this is the kind of flexibility. I mean, at that point, the floor area ratio was computed based on the entire PDD. But there have been other projects that have slipped by, mainly because a lot of times, if you're talking to someone, when you talk floor area ratio, they are looking at it as lot coverage.
I would point out this. I would point out this, that the only areas that are a potential problem are the Route 8 corridor and downtown. all the PDDs that we've done that are out on the fringe. In fact, even the most recent one that we adopted, the replacement for PDD 101, the tower building, the residential towers over on Petromont, that's within the 80%. And yet it's a 4 or 5 story building. So it doesn't really tie your hands too much, but in that case, we needed a lot of outdoor parking, and that brought the floor area ratio down within reasonable numbers. So if,
What about CubeSmart on Bridgeport Avenue? That's a storage facility. That's a PDD.
which one?
CubeSmart was an existing building on a relatively, the back of that, there was substantial amount of land in the back of it that is unusable, but it counts towards floor area ratio.
I'm sorry, which project were you referring to?
CubeSmart, which was Index Works and became Storage Deluxe, who sold out to CubeSmart.
Oh, yeah. But even
that
that's got a sizable piece of property associated with it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's within the limits.
Yeah.
All right, any other commissioners have any questions for Attorney Thomas? Okay, Mr. Panico, any other comments before we move to the public on this?
Well, again, just I don't want to just reiterate everything that was said, but the commission has 2 or 3 options that we can get into when we discuss the merits of this. And I think within the public hearing as called, you can go one of 3 different ways at minimum. So perhaps it's best if we discuss it after the public hearing is closed.
Okay.
Your 3 alternatives are basically eliminate it, increase the number of it, or make it applicable only in restricted areas like downtown and the corridor, the Bridgeport Avenue area.
Okay. All right, so we have the sign-in sheet for application 2210 for members of the public here in the auditorium. No one has signed up. Is there anyone in the auditorium that would like to make comments to the commission on application 2210? Okay, hearing none, Mr. Zeddy, is there anybody on Zoom? Okay, there is none from Zoom. So I'll just throw it out to those participating here in tonight's meeting via Zoom. If you would like to comment on this application 2210, please use the raise your hand function. Okay, nothing, no one further?
No.
Okay, and is there anybody participating via the phone? No, no one participating at all on the phone?
Yeah, if someone participates.
Okay, there's some participating, so if there's anyone who is listening in via the phone and you would like to participate, you have to dial *9 to notify us that you'd like to comment. Okay, nothing, Mr. Rossetti. All right, so no one from public on this particular application. So, all right, any final comments, questions, or concerns from the commission? All right, seeing that there are no other comments from the commission, motion to continue or close the public hearing from a member of the commission.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Okay, there's a motion to close public hearing
I'll second that.
from Commissioner Motto, and there's a second from Commissioner Kelly. So on the motion to close the public hearing for application 2210, made by Commissioner Motto, seconded by Commissioner Kelly, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Laskos,
Aye.
Commissioner Tiki,
Aye.
Commissioner Motto,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Parkins,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, so we are not at a point this evening to discuss this at all, or actually we are at a point to discuss this evening, and that would help staff to learn how we intend to proceed. So if you are comfortable with doing that, we can, but if you would prefer to, that discussion taking place at an upcoming meeting, we can do that as well. So Commissioner Kelly, would you like to have discussion tonight or later?
Well, let's do it later.
Later? Okay, Commissioner Moto?
I guess I see it as sort of simple, so I could do it now or later, whatever the commission wants. Yeah.
All right, very good. Commissioner Parkins?
I'm just a little confused at the moment because I thought we closed the public hearing on this at our last meeting.
Ah,
Now, this.
According to the minutes, application 2210, right? Is that what we're talking about? Application
Yeah.
2210. There was a motion made by myself, seconded by Commissioner Kelly to close the public hearing.
And that was June
The motion
29th?
passed 6-0.
What do we have? Let me kind of see it for a second.
Yes, the hearing is closed. That's correct. The hearing is closed. But you can discuss it if you wish.
But what Commissioner Parkins is saying is according to the minutes from June 29th,
Which have not been approved.
Yeah, we haven't approved those yet, that we went through a public hearing.
So should it have been continued maybe? Did we vote to continue?
That's, okay. this
So it's
was
an
a-
error, it's an error. in
Yeah,
the
this,
minutes.
we read this tonight. That this was a continued-
That is correct, Madam Chairman.
Yeah.
I just
Right.
looked at my notes.
Yes, we continued it, the minutes.
Okay, sorry for the
amended.
confusion.
All right,
Well, we know we've got to correct the minutes.
exactly. Okay, so Commissioner Parkins, you were saying, when would you want to discuss this, tonight or later at another meeting?
Whatever the consensus is, I'll go along with it. I'm not one way or the other.
All right, Commissioner Ticky, how about you?
Happy to do whatever the consensus is.
You guys are all passing the buck. Commissioner Lascaux,
Discuss at a later date.
later. Okay, well, I will go for a later date, and I'm going to, as chair, then take it as we will discuss it at an upcoming meeting. Give everybody the chance to think it over.
Okay.
Okay? Very good. So we've closed the public hearing. We are going to discuss this further later on. So this item will be on the agenda in an upcoming meeting at some point in the future. So we're going to move on to applicate the third agenda item, which is continuation of the public hearing for application 2211, Dominic Thomas for TVG Partners LLC at 445 Access Road, Assessors Map 63, Lot 7, on 2.03 acres for a major modification of PDD number 84 and final site development plan approval for 102,000 square foot self-storage facility. Just to note that the public hearing for this application opened June 29th, 2022, and since the opening of the public hearing, additional documents were posted on the city's website, including updated site plans dated June 27th, 2022, a drainage report, and a response to a letter from the city engineer. Mr. Rossetti, any other documents, materials, or correspondence? Did you say no? No, okay. All right, so Attorney Thomas, I understand you're representing the applicant, so go ahead and proceed.
Attorney Dominic Thomas, Cohen & Thomas, 350 Main Street, Derby, Connecticut, representing the applicant. We did, when we were notified that this was going to be on the agenda, we did also, and I know it came in, I think, as soon as it was received yesterday, I believe, submit the photometric plan, which was there was a discussion as to, I think Mr. Panico asked, that there be a photometric plan. Basically, even though you're talking about and it is necessary, but you're talking about a site that's surrounded on one side by Walmart, and on the other side by Viking Tool, but it was needed, so it was submitted. I can screen share with it.
Yeah, Attorney Thomas, if you would, your you're losing me here. I have no idea what you're referring to.
Okay, there was a
Lighting-
there was a
lighting
request
plan.
for
Oh, a lighting
Oh,
plan,
yeah.
a
okay.
lighting plan, a photometric plan. I believe, let me see if I did call it up.
That's right. Right.
Well, what I have up right now is the site plan, okay? And this was the old site plan. So just to refer you, this was what was previously approved. And I believe, oh no, here's the photometric plan. I'm sorry. Here's the photometric plan that was submitted, I believe, yesterday as soon as it was received. This is a relative, and Chris Curtis is here to discuss it more, but it's a 3-page, and this page contains the candle power, I believe it's called. Chris, do you want to comment on the 3 pages? Or?
Sure. Chris Kokidis, TVG Partners, with the applicant. So what we did was we laid out a photometric analysis using lighting, specified lighting off of the building, and laid it out as such to mitigate any bleed over the property lines. We feel we're pretty successful in doing so. Among the northern property line, I think the highest foot candle that extends over the property line is about 1, averaging closer to about 0.05. To put that into perspective, we search for probably between 3 and 5 on the property line to be well lit and safe. So we think that the design team has done a good job laying this out, and we wanted to submit it for your review and consideration.
Okay.
So
The spillage, is there any spillage? I know, I see what you have on the screen, but.
Yeah, so Dominic, if I can ask that you zoom in, all those little tick marks are actually foot candles is the metric that is used to measure light levels. And like I said, on our property, we're searching for between, probably 2 and 4, maybe 5 at certain areas. Now, if you zoom in even more, Dominic, I hate to ask you to drive on this. All those little markers show a number. So those are the foot candles. I believe it's on a 5x5 grid as it's measured, or some variation similar to that. But as you can see, we've tried to do our best here to prevent anything over 1 from getting over the property line. And you can see as it gets over the property line, it dissipates very rapidly. These are dark sky compliant fixtures. They have lenses on the top to prevent any light from obviously going up and causing any pollution in that manner. But as you can see here, we tried to get that to go as quickly to 0, albeit while maintaining a proper light level around the property. Some challenges here is, obviously the building on the north and south property lines, that drive aisle is pretty close to the property line. But like I said, I think the design team did a good job here. And you can see along Walmart, we just bleed over to 0.6 there. And like I said, averaging about 4 right along the drive aisle, which is adequate.
Okay. Attorney Thomas, anybody else from your team?
No, the only, I mean, we have other people. The only other comments I think that were directed was there was a comment about moving the building back if we push the building back 20 feet, it enters into the upland review area. Once it enters into the upland review area, technically we would have to then withdraw this application, go back to wetlands, get an approval for wetlands, and then come back to you, which, and the clients have made it clear that, I mean, we went through a work session, we went through a lot to define this, and we feel that the building is, given the circumstances that the building is set so far back from Bridgeport Avenue, and it's really not that close. There's a substantial drive aisle in front of it off of Access Road. But we do that with the landscape plan that we showed you. It's obviously going to be a tremendous enhancement over what there's now. I showed you last time the picture, the Google GIS air photo of what's there now, the contractor yard. I mean, it was approved for the gas station and the self-storage. So I don't think there is any need. I don't think there's any benefit gained by putting it back into the regulated upland review area to gain a few feet. And I think we answered most of the other questions. I defer to Chris or anybody else if there was anything else to point out, but I think that oh, I'm sorry. And I'll have Chris talk to you about this. There were questions about security and security gates. I, again, pointed out the issue that the property is still accessible in other areas, but if the concern come up, Chris, I'll turn it over to you, what you plan on doing with respect to
Sure. Thank you, Dominic. So in response to some of the concerns of some of the commission members regarding security for the site, what we have proposed doing is we are willing, not willing, but taking that into consideration, we're going to fence 3 sides of the property right off the bat, right at the conclusion of construction, or part of construction. That would start at just about the exterior loading bays. That would continue on those 3 sides. So the north boundary, the west boundary, and the south. What we're also going to do, heeding to the recommendations and concerns, is provide the infrastructure that if the security does become an issue, we're going to put in conduits and electric and other methods for us to quickly react and install security gates. And those security gates, again, would start at both the north drive aisle at the that 10 by 30 unit right up there where the building gets close to the north property line, and likewise on the south, right there where the other last drive up unit would be. So those would be security gates, automated, hooked up to our access control. So we would put in all the infrastructure that's required to quickly install those should the need arise.
You don't think that would be a better thing to install initially and forget the rest of the fencing? Because that's all you really need is the 2 gates. You don't need the fencing.
Yeah, sure.
The idea is to keep unauthorized vehicles from going in the backyard.
So
that's the bottom line. That's all it is.
Yeah. But we use gates when it's necessary in certain areas where we think the security warrants, or we would like to provide more security. Shelton, at that our initial onset, thoughts of the area and where this is going, along with the other protocols that we put in place with cameras and license plate monitoring and other things. Gates and fences, I don't want to say just slow down people that are intent on getting onto your property. They're also a maintenance concern at times. You do drive past a lot of properties where you see the gates open, and largely it's due to them not operating correctly. But again, we do install them when they're required or when we think that the need is there. And at this time, we think Shelton's a great area, and we'd like to prevent people from getting on there to cause a ruckus or nuisance. And if security ever became an issue, we would certainly install them in very short order.
So for those of us that are directionally challenged, such as myself with north, south, east, west, you're basically saying they're going to put a fence along the sides and the back of the property, but not the front.
Correct. No gates at the front of the property. We want this to be welcoming and so on. We also want our residents and tenants tenants to feel secure. And like I said, at this time, we would prefer not to immediately install the gates.
What's the purpose of fencing the rest of the property if it's wide open?
Well, I think after the last meeting, there were some concerns about people, I don't want to say sneaking onto the property, but getting onto the property. So we thought, providing 3 sides of fencing would be a preventative measure. These are highly secured units. So the building itself is a sort of secure perimeter, but just to provide some sense that we are providing what the commission has recommended, as well as taking that into consideration that should we need to provide a full perimeter of security very quickly, at least we have those 3 sides of fencing, and then we can quickly install the gates.
Be that as it may, Chris, I personally feel that you need to rethink your position on that.
I think it's just the opposite, actually. It's like, and just from a consumer point of view, and that's what I was expressing. I don't think this is something that the commission is mandating, but from a consumer point of view, I would not feel safe using your facility without a gated access. That's just my personal preference. So
Understood.
I'm in agreement.
take that as you will.
Yep.
Understood.
All right, Attorney Thomas, there was a letter to the city engineer. Is that something that you wanted to?
I think we addressed it at the last meeting. I think Manny went down and addressed all the points with the city engineer. I think it just made it onto the website later, but we addressed it all.
How about the site engineering design report?
That he addressed. Manny addressed it at the last meeting.
All right. Yeah, I was wondering why you weren't identifying anybody else with you.
Okay.
So, any questions from the commissioners?
I just have a couple questions. So I know this is related to the application we were just discussing. How tall is the tallest part of this building? And that height, how is that in relation to the building, the Walmart building, which I know is substantially up higher? Or at least I hope.
I cannot speak.
The height at the highest point.
Yeah, I cannot speak to the Walmart building, obviously, but our building to, I'll give you two elevations. At the front, where we have some signage contemplated, that would be 40 feet from grade. To the flat roof, which would be inside the parapet walls, we're 36 feet, 10 inches.
Okay.
And your property sits down quite a bit from
Oh, yeah.
the
the
Walmart
elevation.
property, right? So it
It's
shouldn't be
20 feet.
higher.
No.
Okay.
Oh, God.
All right, thank you. That's all the questions.
Any other questions for the applicant from the commission? Mr. Panico, do you have any comments?
No, I think we've touched on all the questions that the commission brought up at the last time. The lighting and security, et cetera. Oh, there was one comment made about sidewalks. There are no sidewalks in the area, as everyone knows. And it's quite frankly, on the Walmart site, it's unlikely that there ever will be. You got that big waterway that runs through there, et cetera. But if the commission has any concern, we can simply get the applicant to agree that at such time in the future, if there is a sidewalk program put in, that they will absorb their fair share of it.
Okay.
I think that's reasonable.
So a sidewalk installation.
We can simply make that a condition of the action that we take.
I think it's a good approach. Okay, any other, anything else, Mr. Panico? Otherwise, I'll recognize the public.
No, I'm done. That's the only comments that I had.
Okay. All right, see if there's anyone here. So we're moving into public portion. There's no one that has signed up that is here in the auditorium for application 2211. So last chance, if there's anyone that wishes to comment on this application and you're here in the auditorium. All right, Mr. Rossetti, anyone participating via Zoom?
No.
Okay, final call for anyone participating via Zoom to address the commission. Please use the raise your hand portion. Okay, and moving on to anyone participating by phone? No. Is there anyone still on the phone line? No. Okay. All right, there's no one on the phone line. All right, so all right, so Attorney Thomas, any final comments, questions, or concerns?
No, I think everything we've addressed, and certainly my clients will agree to the sidewalk thing, although maybe we can get the state to take down that island and put a giant sidewalk along that whole area.
Well, obviously the sidewalk will be on the within the state right away. It doesn't have to be on
Right,
your
exactly.
client's property.
No, I understand it, yeah. But,
Okay.
all right, no, I think we're done. Thank you very much for all your attention on this and concern.
All right, so seeing that there's no other comments from the commission, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
It's a motion to close the public hearing for application 2111 from Commissioner Kelly. Is there a second? Mr. Parkins will second. Okay, there's a second from Commissioner Parkins. So on a motion to close the public hearing for application 2211 made by Commissioner Kelly, seconded by Commissioner Parkins. I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Motto?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Tiki? Commissioner Laskos? Commissioner Laskos, was that an aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Parkins?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion to close public hearing has passed 6-0. And this item will be on the agenda of the upcoming commission meeting for discussion. So our next agenda item is an opening of the public hearing for application 2214 S&G of Shelton LLC. And I'll ask Commissioner Amato to read the public hearing notice.
Okay. Shelton Zoning Commission of the City of Shelton, Connecticut hereby gives notice of a public hearing to be held on Wednesday, July 20, 2022 at 6 o'clock via Zoom and at City Hall to consider the following. Initiation of application 22-14 S&G of Shelton LLC at 301 Old Bridgeport Avenue, Assessors Map 91, Lot 17, on 1.91 acres in an RBD zone for a PDD and initial development plan approval for 43 apartments with on-site parking and property. Property is generally bounded as follows: northerly by 295 Old Bridgeport Avenue, easterly by 299 Old Bridgeport Avenue, southerly by Sunwood Avenue, and westerly by Sunwood Condominiums. All supporting material is on file in the Planning and Zoning Office and is available online through the Shelton Planning and Zoning webpage.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Amato. So who is, and before we go on there, I just want to mention posted on the city's website are the following documents: the application, a statement of uses and standards, site plan, schematic site plan B, which is the grading and utility plan, a topographic survey, a site engineering design report, which is a stormwater drainage report, city engineer's review, ground floor plan B, proposed apartment floor plan, and second floor plan B. Mr. Rossetti, any other reports?
No.
Okay, so nothing needs to be acknowledged. And Attorney Thomas, are you representing the applicant?
Yes, Attorney Dominic Thomas, Conan Thomas, 315 Main Street, Derby, Connecticut, representing the applicant. The first thing I would like to say is that as I began to research what was posted on the website, I do want to state for the record that the engineer's report that is posted on the website is not the engineer's report for this site. In fact, it was Mr. Panico that pointed out to me that at the top of it says the property across the street, the Blakeman site. It says 309. It says 309, and it refers to the property across the street. So today I spoke to your city engineer, Remus Balsas, and Remus confirmed that report that is posted on the website is related to the property across the other application. I don't recall the number. I think it's Brookview is the apartment thing. However, there was a report which he provided to me, which was done in an email by I think it's the assistant city engineer, Michael Canos, which was provided to us today. I don't know whether I sent it to him, whether he'll be able to address it today. With that clarification, I will report that I also emailed, I know they haven't been put up on the website yet. Hopefully we will get to a time when planning and zoning staff can put things on the website as soon as they receive it, but I sent the notices to the property owners in accordance with your notice requirements and pictures of the sign posting.
All right, so what you're saying, Attorney Thomas, is that the letter dated June 8th, addressed to Mr. Rossetti from Remus, is the item that was misfiled under this application, and that applies to the other application.
That applies to Brookview, yes. I
Okay.
confirmed it with Remus, not just, I didn't know whether it was a typo at the top or not. So I
Right.
confirmed it with him, and he did send me the actual report that was done via an email. Okay,
Right.
so we have that.
How you want to proceed?
Yes, we're willing to proceed. At this point, it's an application for a 43 apartment unit, and Manny has started screen sharing, and I will turn it over to Manny or Pat or whomever to describe to you the site. And you are all, I know, familiar, having gone through Brookview, with the issues with respect to Sunwood. So I'll turn it over to Manny.
Well, this is
Or Pat. I'm
Pat
sorry.
Rose.
Okay.
Pat Rose from Rose T-Zone Company, 35 Brentwood Avenue in Fairfield. I'll just do a brief overview and go through the architecture, and then I'll let Manny get into the nuts and bolts of the site. So the site, I think you're all familiar with. This is to the north of Sunwood Drive, and it contains 1.91 acres. It is currently has a couple parking areas on it and a house previously. And what we're proposing is an apartment building with 43 units. It's 2.5 stories tall. And to the east, there's a larger parking lot of 43 parking spaces. And then to the west, there's a smaller parking lot, which is a story higher, actually, that has 24 parking spaces. So there are 67 parking spaces altogether. So you're coming up in grade as you come up Sunwood Drive, that you go from a 3-story section of the building to a 2-story section of the building in the smaller parking lot. So what we've done is create an entrance into this building in the corner of the building, inside corner of the building, from that larger lower parking lot that accesses the lowest floor. And then there are units on 2/3 of the building on that floor. And then there are some common spaces that back up to the retaining wall that changes the grade to this smaller parking lot. And then there's another entrance which brings you into a corridor that brings you to the main common area from the parking lot. And then there's also an exit in the back and then the front, right up in front, that brings you back to that parking lot. What we've done on the PDD associated with this and the statement of uses and standards is to define, the requirements that we're proposing for our site. Look at density. We're proposing 1 unit per 1,900 square foot of site area, and we currently have 1,939 square foot. So what happens, and actually I went through the density on a couple of the projects just so I can understand, where we've gone with density in the apartment buildings that are not downtown, and projects that have been approved and some have been constructed already. When you look at the Brookview Phase 1 project that was done, which was 28 units, the usable area on that site was about 1.25 acres. So it was 22 units per acre. That's how that calculates out. When you look at the Beardsall Mill AJ's project, the 3 acres with 89 units, that's at 29 units per acre. The recent clock tower at Petromont Place was 3.54 acres for 100 units, and that was 28 units per acre. And Brookview Phase 2, which is directly across the street to the south, is about 1.88 acres of usable space, and that's 30 units, and that's about 16 units per acre. Our project, 301 Old Bridgeport Avenue, is 1.91 acres at 43 units, and that's 22.5 units per acre. So it's in the same ballpark as other projects that have been proposed and approved, and some built that are not downtown. in Shelton.
Mhm.
So what we've done with the frontage, we try to keep some of the previous zone items that we had, frontage being 135 foot, we have 527 lineal feet of frontage. It's something that we should understand is that the frontage of our site, a lot of it is the Brookview site, because Sunwood Drive, the majority of it is within our site area. So Sunwood Drive is owned by two different owners, the Brookview to the south and ourselves to the north. And it has an easement for the Sunwood condominium. We are looking at we had said 3 stories in the PDD, and we've got 2.5 stories because we split grade on the building, maximum height of 40 feet, and we're just slightly under 40 feet for our average height. Coverage at 25%, and we're at 15%, 15.4. Maximum floor area is at 80%, which is we discussed previously. And we are at 46%, so we're well under that for the FAR. Setbacks, we're 40 foot to the front, we're at 45 to our front. Side is 20 foot, and we're at 66. And then the rear is 20 foot, and we're at 20.7. So we're pushed up against our setback towards the rear of the property to the north. So if we could go, Manny, if we could go to the architecturals, I'll just go through it quickly so you can understand what we've done with the parking. We have a breakdown of units in our building, which are 19 one-bedroom units and 24 studios. So this is a little bit different than other buildings that are in the area, but they feel that the market is there for studios also here. So we have total 43. The parking at the 19 one-bedroom units, we're showing at two spaces per unit, which is 38. And then studios, we're looking at 1.2 spaces per unit, which is 29, which comes out to the 67 parking spaces that we have provided on the site. What you have is this is the entrance to the first floor of the building, brings you to an elevator, mail area, then corridor to the right that brings you down to all the residential units, 1 bedrooms and studios. And then if you go down the corridor at the end, there's 2 units that face out towards this courtyard that's created in the front. And the rear of the building, we have the fitness center, storage, and electrical water meter rooms. You've got a stairwell at either end of the building, provides access up and down the different floors. What we have for the units that are on site are 1-bedroom units, which range between 605 square feet to 908 square feet. And then studio units, which range from 502 square feet to 660 square feet. There's a wide variety of different types of studios, because we've got some of these corner units that are a little larger. Well, Manny, if you go to the next, this is your second floor, where we have, you're coming up the elevator or one of the stairs, and you have an entrance from the upper parking lot in this upper left-hand corner. So that brings you into the corridor system. And then you have typical 1-bedroom studios, 1-bedrooms as you go around. Most of the 1-bedroom units, except for this stack in this corner here, the rest of them have a deck associated with them. The studios do not have a deck associated with them. Most of the 1-bedrooms do, and you'll see that in the elevations. All of the each apartment has typical washer dryer, mechanical closet, self-contained within the unit itself. We go to the next floor, the 3rd floor, which is for the most part identical to the 2nd floor. With the numbers of units, you end up with, on these typical floors, 2nd floor, you have 7 1-bedrooms and 9 studios on the floor.
Mr. Rose, is there a separate floor plan that is titled third floor?
No, there's a ground first, first and second.
First, second, okay, got it.
Yep. So if we go to the elevation, Manny. This is the front elevation you see at the top. That's a long Sunwood Drive. And on this lower section, you're coming from the parking lot, walking up to this main entrance, which is in the corner. And then the grade changes, it goes up to this second parking lot in the rear, and there's an exit door from that stairway actually coming out here. What we've done with materials is, for the most part, we've used a lot of stone, cultured stone on the building, along with cementitious shakes on the upper 2 floors. And then we used a cementitious siding where the balconies are, just to break up the materials, black balconies and the gables, just to break up the materials. Give us an opportunity to change a little color and highlight the gables, highlight the balconies. What you see below is the right side elevation, which is, you're looking from the parking lot, the lower parking lot to the east, back to the building. Is 3 stories. An exit stair is in this one gable. The entrance is in the corner, and then on the other side, you'll see one of the balconies that goes up for 3 stories. So it's 3 stories on this end of the building. Next is the rear elevation that is facing the properties behind us. And it is similarly, treated with stone, the lower sections, and the shakes on the second and third level, and the siding at the gables and the balconies.
Mr. Rose, what did you say that this view, rear elevation, is from?
There's a residential property behind there. There's also
You're talking about, it's the view from
American
Sunwood?
Legion.
W back there, yeah.
Wait a minute, 2 of you talking at once. The rear elevation that's on the top of the page of A202 is the
Correct.
view from,
View from the north looking south.
right, but
Just to go back to
Those
the
directionally challenged.
are we talking about from Tizzy Drive, the houses that are on there, or are we talking about the Sunwood condominiums?
Yes. No, Pitney Drive.
Tizzy Drive, okay, thank you.
The house, and you got the post behind it.
All right, and left side elevation is from Sunwood condominiums.
We'll get to that. It's the last elevation on A202. Left side elevation at the bottom. This is from Sunwood. You're looking at a 2-story building at this side, where we have the stone at the gables, and then the second levels, third level are these shakes and the siding at the 2 gables and at the balconies.
Okay. All right, what else do you have for us?
Manny, to go through some of the site items and what they've gone through wetlands, and we've been approved there, so we can go through all that.
Good evening. My name is Manny Silva from Rose Tizo, civil engineer on the project. As you can see, the existing condition of this property is an asphalt parking lot. There's a existing house here, another asphalt parking lot, and then there was some overflow parking here for Hunan Pond quite a time, when it was open. So what we have is we had some wetlands that we were filling, and we're relocating them and mitigating them here, which is going to be near the brook that crosses under Sunwood and to the north onto Bridgeport Avenue that way. So I'll go on to the site plan. Pat talked about the site plan. What's highlighted in red is basically the impervious areas that were there already. We did this for wetlands so they could kind of see where, highlight where the existing structures were. So we're going to come off of Old Bridgeport Avenue. The lower parking lot's going to be coming off of Sunwood across from the proposed driveway that was approved last couple of weeks ago for Mr. Blakeman. You then have another access way to the smaller parking lot, which is on the second floor, and this is the side that's only 2 stories high. So go on to the next one. Basically, our drainage right now is how we're going to grade this is we have a level plateau here. We are going to kind of lower the grade here to build the building in this area. We are going to have a infiltration swale kind of to pick up the water that comes off of the post site that comes off the surface. So you'll have this grass swale with an under drain. Will then terminate at this catch basin here. We pick up the drainage from the upper lot with this catch basin, which then comes down to a series of catch basins here on the lower lot. And then that will go through a water treatment unit and then into an underground gallery system. We have 400 lineal feet of 4x4 gallery. And just to go through the boring numbers, we have a reduction of all the storm events at 1% reduction at the 2-year storm, 15% reduction at the 5-year storm, 21% reduction at the 10-year storm, 25% reduction at the 25-year storm, 1% reduction at the 50 and a 0.6 at the 100. So this means that basically after our project is constructed, the amount of runoff coming off of the site from today's, it will be reduced by this amount. We also do comply with the DEP's water quality volume requirement. We're required 3,000 cubic feet and we're providing 8,000 cubic feet. So basically that's the grading. The grading really is, like Pat was said, we're about, this is the upper area. We're up at 121 here, and then we go down to 205 or 207 on the lower lot, and then the main entrance comes in at 210. So there's about 11-foot difference from the first floor to the second floor entrances and exits. So then all of our drainage overflow, which won't be much, will come into this new wetland area, which will be adjacent to the Bury Brook. And if that were ever to fill up, it would overflow to a riprap overflow area here and into the Bury Brook and off to the north. So during construction, we want to protect the resources around the area. So we have actual phased soil erosion control plans. So when this site gets rough graded and it doesn't have any of these new structures in place, we have some temporary swales, redirection swales, that will direct water to 2 temporary sedimentation basins, one here and then one here. And what that do is if it rains, the water will be collected into these sedimentation basins. The muddy water will then settle out and infiltrate into the ground and won't transport any mud or debris into the Bury Brook or anywhere outside of the property. The perimeter of the project is silt fenced with silt fence and hay bales. You can see the hay bale reinforcement is right here. That's to kind of help the silt fence stand up, even if it has a lot of load coming in from stormwater from uphill. We also have check dams on these temporary swales, which are hay bales in a V, to kind of stop and slow down the water and collect any sediments also in these little crickets in here. And then the overall general soil erosion control plan is right here. We have our anti-tracking pads that come off of Sunwood Avenue to knock off any mud off of the truck tires during construction. We have a soil pile, which is surrounded by silt fence so that we can stockpile material and not have any of that material wash out from this area. We have silt sacks in all the catch basins, which will protect the basins during construction, and then we'll move those sacks once all the site is paved and stabilized with grass and landscaping, and the units will be ready to go operational like if they were new without having to vacuum them or anything like that. Go on to the next. Here's our details. Here's our silt sacks, anti-tracking pad, diversion berms, which is those swales that I was talking about. And then our temporary sedimentation basins, which is basically a little hole in the ground that holds water to a certain amount, so that during construction, that water is held on the property and is allowed to settle out any particulates. Landscaping plan. We have a lot of foundation plantings here. We have some shade trees out in front. Again, we'd like to dress up the entrances with some low plantings and then some signature trees, flowering trees on either side, flowering trees in the corners. This is more of a screening tree here with some ground plantings. And then what we have here along Sunwood, we have some screening trees, 7 of them up here on the hill. So this is only a 2-story profile here. We then have on top of the hill above this 2-story profile is another 7 trees. So that will adequately screen the property from anyone on Sunwood. So Sunwood, after these are planted, most likely won't see much of the building at all.
Before we go on, Mr. Silva, Commissioner Amato, do you see any problems with the selection?
Oh, thanks for asking. I'm trying to see it. I can't make out the list here very
Here,
well.
I'll read it off. We're using arborvitae.
Oh, I see it, yeah.
Sugar maples, some pear trees. I know you don't, maybe we'll get rid of the pear trees.
Get rid of the
like pears.
And the cherries, black, got some pussy willows, sweet pepper bush, butterfly bush. I think butterfly bush we probably get rid of.
Rid of that, please, yes.
Yeah, the white rhododendron.
Yeah, I don't care. That's okay. I mean, it's not invasive. I'd be happier with a native, but I think that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll take care of that.
Okay, thanks. And thanks, Jenny, for asking.
No problem.
Okay.
Our resident horticulturist.
That's right.
What else do you have for us, Mr. Silva?
We have our lighting plan or our photometrics plan, as the attorney referred to it in the previous application, which is both correct. So we have full cutoff fixtures, LED, basically blade fixtures coming onto the parking lot. As you can see, we have zeros along the property line with no spillage onto the neighbors. We have some light coming onto Sunwood Drive, which I think is okay, as it's actually on our property anyway. And that's basically it. I mean, how these will look, I might have a detail here. Let me see. There are basic LED blades. They're set at 20 foot high. And like I said, night sky with the house side shield, so there won't be any spillage. Here's our details. Concrete curbs around the building, accessible space striping, things of that nature, ramps, striping details. We have our stormwater control, water quality units, our typical trenching details, wood guardrails, and then snouts in the catch basins to help treat water inside the catch basin prior to going into the Vortec unit. And that's basically it for me, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I think you explained it quite well.
Thank you.
Okay, Attorney Thomas, who's next?
He's muted.
At this point, we just got we got the engineer's report, the correct one yesterday. One thing that was brought up at the Brookview meeting, and I know our client was aware of it, concerned the engineer's request that Sunwood Drive be improved up to the point of the entrance to the condos. And I will report to you that our client has talked to Mr. Blakeman. They both seem to be in agreement on it, and they just need to work out the details, and they are prepared to, obviously subject to both projects being approved, they would certainly accept as a condition that they have to contribute to the improvement of Sunwood in accordance with the engineer's report.
Okay, so if this project was approved as well as Brookview 2, the two property owners would collaborate to improve Sunwood Drive.
Correct.
Thank you.
They've had that discussion. I am Again, we do have, we were notified, I guess, not too long ago that this was going forward, that we do have a traffic report coming in. I'm assuming you're probably going to keep the public hearing open. And we can submit a traffic report to it, but at this point, and to address all the engineers' reports. So at this point, we would, entertain any questions for myself or Pat or Manny that the commissioners have.
Do any commissioners have any questions for the applicant's attorney or the engineers and architect?
How wide is Sunwood Drive, Mr. Commissioner Parkins?
Pat or Manny, do you have the answer to that, or?
Anybody? 26?
What is it? 26?
Let's have the applicant representatives.
Yeah.
Put that on the record, please. What is the width of Sunwood Drive?
I didn't expect it to be a tough question.
Yeah. Is the All-Star game tonight or something?
No, the All-Star game was last night.
I mean, I could definitely get you an answer. I think it's 32 feet, but let me just,
Yeah. Manny, I can't. Manny, if you enlarge, there is a setback line from the building to the property line, which, as Manny pointed out, the Sunwood Drive is on this property. But there's a setback line, just to give you some perspective, that's it. I'm reading it at 41 feet as best as I can say.
The easement, if you look at the easement, it's called out as 30 foot.
Yeah.
Right here.
Survey.
Yeah.
It's called out as 30 foot. So it's probably about 26 feet.
26. Yep. That sounds right, Pat.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the reason I'm asking that is I feel that the parking is a little deficient. And here's why. The prices of rents, which is being driven nationwide, is unaffordable for one person to have these types of apartments unless they have a great job in the city or whatever they're doing. I see 2 cars per, so I'm more concerned about visitors because you're already tight at 1.2, which you might as well just say 1. For visitors, you're tight. Is there any wiggle room there to get some more parking? I mean, I think experience is showing that 2 parking spaces per unit is really what's.
I don't, with all due respect, I don't know of any of the outer urban and suburban approvals that are having any parking issues, that are having any problems at the lower numbers. I mean, there are, there's things mitigating both ways, because there are many reports saying that some of the younger people are not, opting for cars. So there's been less cars. I think that there's really nothing to show it. There's nothing to back it up. That's what I'm saying. There's no situations where it has occurred. Actually, if somebody were having, I understand what you're saying about a visitor coming in, and certainly if they had visitors staying overnight, that could be a problem during the day. Basically what this would happen is you would have 43 spaces designated, 1 for each apartment. And then the rest would be designated as visitor spaces. That's the way they normally operate in the leases. So if you had 2 cars, then you would be parking in, quote unquote, the visitor spaces, one of the additional 20 some odd spaces that would be left over.
Attorney Thomas,
yeah.
I'd like you to just pause for a minute, and I'd like Commissioner Parkins to restate the comment that you might not have heard. What did I say? With all due respect.
Oh, with all due, it's getting late. With all due respect, I don't see how anybody could not have a car living in this location. Unless working at Walmart, and I don't think they can afford to rent an apartment at this complex if they're working at Walmart. So my concern is, and the reason.
Or the other thing is, somebody takes out a Uber or Lyft franchise.
Yeah.
So it's relative to the width of the road, because I'm concerned that visitors not having any spots to park in will just park along the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the applicant does need to take that into consideration and.
You know, when you look at the mark, they've got a lot of internal areas that if that happens, that people could park, but here I don't see that. They're just going to use the road.
Well, we'll certainly, and again, my understanding that public hearing was going to be kept open. That's a concern we'll address, we'll be able to address further.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
I'd like to say I agree with Commissioner Parkins on that concern.
Mhm. Okay. All right, so any other comments, questions, or issues that we have before we go to the public portion? Mr. Panico, do you have any comments?
A few. I just did my initial review, but there's a lot of history to this site because we've looked at many development proposals on it, including this type of proposal. In fact, there were 2 or 3 other variations of this before we got to this final one. I've expressed it before and I'll express it again. I think it's too intensive. With all due respect to Pat's analysis of numbers, in analyzing the area of this site, you really need to take that Sunwood Drive out of there because Sunwood Drive is functioning as a street. What you have for density purposes is what's off of that street. I also comment on the fact that a couple of the 1 or 2 of the units on the first floor in that back corner are really buried into the slope, but then they're excavating the slope to make some open wall space. That's forcing it. But the problem I'm really concerned with relates to the both Ruth and Elaine's comments about parking. I think the parking is deficient. And if you try to put any kind of a reasonable parking ratio on it, where are you going to put the cars? Right now, the parking lot that faces the back of the property that fronts on Old Bridgeport Avenue has a 10-foot retaining wall almost on the property line. I mean, everything is very, very crowded. I would also ask the question about rubbish disposal. I know the commission does not particularly like to see outdoor dumpsters, but are you in agreement with this? Because trying to put centralized rubbish is kind of difficult in this particular building design.
And where is the dumpsters is in the top right corner.
Right. And I think some consideration has to be given to the fact that how convenient is that for people that go out the back door? Because 9 times out of 10 people take their rubbish out when they're leaving to go someplace on a trip. But it's something.
Well, I can see people when they're leaving, popping in the car, putting the garbage in the trunk, scooting down, taking a left, circling back.
They would probably have to do that. Let me see. So.
Valet trash. My daughter has valet trash.
Ballet trash. I didn't know
Valet
what
trash.
you
They
said
just
the
leave the
first
bag
word was.
outside the door.
Ballet
Somebody
trash.
comes and picks it up every day.
I think to make the site more comfortable, that lower parking lot's got to get a little bit smaller. It's got to get a little further away from that property line. And I think the answer lies in the removal of 2 or 3 units from the development.
Which parking lot are you referring to again?
I'm right there.
No, I don't know where your right there is. Are you talking about the one that's?
Well, somebody had an indicator floating around. That's why I said that. It's in the area where the dumpster is.
Okay, the dumpster parking lot. Okay, got it.
That corner is very, very tight.
Okay, anything?
And the
else?
ratio, when you start piling all these things together, the whether or not the parking ratio is adequate, and you know, if the parking ratio gets increased, you need more spaces, you're not going to have a place to put those spaces. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm. Okay,
we've looked at various development formats for this property. I think the concept that's been settled on is a good concept. I think it's the best one of all the ones we've looked at. But the question is 43 units the right density? So.
okay. Okay, anything else, Mr. Panico?
Well, between now and the continuation of the hearing, it would be good if we could see what those density figures are that Pat threw out, what they would be if you limit the site to the northerly boundary line of Sunwood Drive.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, the applicant's acknowledging that.
So I just think we need to take a step back and look at our overall concerns with the development.
Okay.
Does it fit or does it not fit? Is it the right density? Is there enough parking? Those are the basic elements. Once you settle on that, then you can put them on the site.
Okay. All right, so if there aren't any other comments, questions, or concerns from the commission or Mr. Panico, we'll move into the public portion. Thank you, Ben. All right, there are two people who have signed up that are here in the auditorium.
There's someone coming up, also that wants to say.
Did you want to sign up? Okay, go ahead. Lucky considering.
Well,
what's
because
going
no,
on
they
in
did
England.
say that
Yeah.
Shelton was gonna have a cooling center, so as soon as they're.
Or the senior center. Community center, too. All right, first one signed up to here in the auditorium is Eleanor Lewis. Is Eleanor Lewis here? Nobody mentioned it. All right, so we'll move on to next one.
She left.
She did? Oh, okay. Betty Gabriel? State your name for the record and your address. Thank you.
Betty Gabriel, I live at 491.
Just pull it
Yeah,
down.
pull it
Hill in Sunwood condominiums. Many of my questions, bring us just through the discussion this evening. My greatest concern is for the impact on the Sunwood community and surrounding community, density, the traffic. It's already been a problem within our community. Parking is horrendous in our community. We are having significant problems, and we are 2-bedroom units. We are zoned, it was the care development zone. We have the 2 parking spaces per unit plus the garage. People are parking all over the street. I mean, that's how bad it is. So to have more traffic, et cetera, we do have concern for that, and we'd like to see that addressed. I would like to see that addressed. I was wondering, I mean, is the public going to be able to speak at the next hearing? Are
Yes.
we going to be able to? Okay, because I'd like to. We only received this notification yesterday. So I have not had an opportunity to review all of the plans. I just kind of skimmed over and had a general idea. I'd like to see the traffic study that's proposed. I'd like to see the engineer's comments.
Yeah, it's been pretty much the protocol that whenever new material is added to the website and the public hearing is still open, public has a chance to comment on that.
Thank you. And, at some point, I'm wondering if the developer would be willing to meet with the surrounding community to discuss any efforts to mitigate the traffic issues, the parking issues, especially in Sunwood. I know that we have considered at some point putting in a gate, block off, because we're going to be getting between the two developments, we're looking at over 70 units. And it's going to be significant where we already are having a problem. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next is Susan Teasdale.
Susan Teasdale, 392 Lapeer Ridge. I'm an owner and a resident of Sunwood condominiums. I'm not completely opposed to this application, but I do have a number of concerns. I do like the fact that hopefully there will be an apartment building on this parcel, something residential, something I definitely prefer versus having commercial, because it's a good buffer. Buildings on Old Bridgeport Avenue.
Susan, get a little closer to the mic.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
How's that?
Better, yes.
As far as the apartment building itself, I think 43 apartments is a lot. I think it's way too much. Too dense for this area and too dense for this small parcel of land that it's sitting on. You know, I look at the apartment across the street that was just approved for Mr. Blakeman, the 30 apartments at 303 Old Bridgeport Avenue. And the first building that adjoins that is Mr. Blakeman's also, that is 28 units. And I think that's a pretty appropriate size. It's the maximum actually. On his first building, he asked for 38 apartments and the commission did not approve that. So they thought that was too much back then. That's just a couple of years ago. So 43, I think is quite a bit. I don't know if also as far as the city plan of development, if a building this size on this parcel with 43 units on top of it, lots of studios, I don't know if that's really quite appropriate for this particular spot. So I'd be in favor of sort of downgrading the number of units, certainly in the size of the building here. I didn't hear anything about affordable housing unless I missed it. I hope there are some affordable housing units. I'm certainly in favor of that. As far as the parking, I agree with the comments that have been made by the commissioners so far. There are definitely not enough parking spots here. And I prefer to see 2 parking spots per unit. And again, I think that's pretty realistic for where people are right now, as you mentioned. And again, not to keep bringing up Mr. Blakeman, the building was just approved and he's got 30 units across the street with 62 parking spots. And his adjoining building has 28 units. I don't have exact number of parking spots, but I think it's probably pretty comparable to the 2 spots also over there. And I think that's quite appropriate. I do have a concern about overflow parking on Sunwood Drive. If there aren't enough parking spots on this lot. And that's visitors, that's contractors. It could be a lot of people parking on Sunwood Drive. Sunwood Drive is a fire lane for the fire marshal. And it is very important, you know, the road might be wide enough, but I wouldn't call it a flight road. We need to really make sure that we have access for emergency vehicles going not only up to Sunwood, but to now these 2 apartment buildings that are right there. Sunwood has 50 buildings on the lot with 168 units. That's a lot up there. And you know, Mr. Blakeman's building has 30 apartments. There are 43 proposed here. That's an awful lot. So it's very important that the emergency vehicles, especially fire trucks, can always have access to Sunwood Drive. I think there will definitely be an impact on the Sunwood condos with, you know, we already do have a problem with people cutting through. It's been a chronic problem at Sunwood, unfortunately. People cutting through between Bridgeport Avenue and Elk Rock Road to avoid the traffic on Bridgeport Avenue. It's very likely, I think, that some of the apartment residents will be doing the same for the same reason. And of course, because Sunwood is private property, the only access for these apartment residents to and from their building is from Old Bridgeport Avenue only onto Bridgeport Avenue. And I know the traffic's a lot lighter out there on Bridgeport Avenue now, but I don't think that's going to last. I think we're going back to the pre-COVID traffic situation. So I think it's important to plan for the traffic levels. But I think the worse the traffic gets out there, the more it's going to encourage some of these apartment folks, unfortunately, to try to cut through Sunwood, which creates the problem for us. And because it creates a traffic problem, it creates a safety problem. We don't have sidewalks at Sunwood. We have a lot of people that walk the property on the roads. We have children that walk on the roads, including to the bus stops, but going to the pool, tennis court, clubhouse, and everything. So we really cannot have people who do not belong on the property cutting through. And I'd like to hear from the applicants some proposals for how to mitigate this problem for us. I know some of the solutions that have been proposed in the past, specifically in 2018, when there was another department proposal here, were things like adding signs and speed bumps, that kind of thing. It doesn't really work. And then there's the issue of the gate. And I am very opposed to putting a gate on this property for a number of reasons. It really will not, it will solve one problem, but kind of create another problem. So it doesn't really fully fix the issue. So beyond putting in a gate, I'd like to hear some other proposals. The problem with the gate is that if you install a gate at the lower entrance of Sunwood, right down near the apartments, it really is only going to keep out, obviously, the apartment tenants down there and any local drivers who figure out we now have a gate that's locked. But the problem is now there will be a constant stream through the years of people who don't realize there's a gate down there. There are going to still be people coming through from Mills Rock Road trying to sneak down to Bridgeport Avenue. And they're going to get to the bottom and see a locked gate. And then they're going to have to turn around and go all the way back up through the property and come out on Mills Rock Road again anyway. So that problem is never going to go away, actually. It's not possible to install gates on the two entrances that we have on Mills Rock Road for a number of reasons, but there's no room on the property anyway to install anything up there. So all you could have is a single gate at the lower entrance, which would also end up being inconvenient and impractical, not only to the 168 unit owners who live there. We have to keep opening up the gate to get in and out of the property. But there are numerous vehicles that come out here on a daily basis. It's a big property. You know, yes, contractors, delivery vehicles. It's a constant stream of vehicles coming through here. And we really can't have a locked gate down there. It really doesn't make any sense at all. And lastly on that, you know, Sunwood residents should not have to install a gate to fix a problem that's potentially caused by a developer. That's not our problem to begin with. And we should be able to have open access to our property at all times. The last thing I would like to just mention is, as far as trying to figure out what to do about the traffic that I'm sure is going to be coming through Sunwood, I'm trying to think of some ways to mitigate this. And I can only come up with some minor things, but it might help. Yeah, that's something else that would be great. But and you know, I think some simple things like for the entrances to the parking lots, if there could just be a sign there as people are coming out Well, actually, a sign at the parking lot entrances, just with the address on it, maybe just to say 301 on it. Be a simple thing. Because it would really help when people come in from Bridgeport Avenue who are not familiar with the property. If they're looking for that apartment building or Mr. Blaken's on the other side, it's going to be really easy for everybody to go scooting right past both of those buildings, and they'll immediately be into someone's property, which is going to cause just no end of people turning around constantly. Come back out of there. It's a simple thing, but I think it might help a bit. You know, this is visitors, contractors with vehicles, the vehicles coming in here. Signs, if they are installed, should be lighted also for night time. Is the design of the entry and exit into these parking lots. If it could possibly be designed as you're coming out of the parking lot without a curve that goes off on both sides, without a curve that goes off to the right, which would sort of encourage people to head towards Sunwood. If you could somehow make the exit coming out of the parking lots so that it's obvious people can only go down toward Bridgeport Avenue and not head up toward Sunwood. That might be a little bit of help. And also a sign right there, maybe saying no right turn or left turn only or something, a reminder, don't go through Sunwood. And last thing I'd like to mention is it would be nice if the owner of the building could help us a lot by notifying the tenants that Sunwood Drive is a private road, that the tenants can exit the parking lots toward Bridgeport Avenue only, and that there's no parking on Sunwood Drive at all.
You're welcome. All right, last call for anyone in the auditorium that would like to comment on this particular application before the commission. Come on up, sir. Sign up first.
We'll keep it short and sweet, I promise.
My hand.
Good time. Who's that? Oh. Oh, 'cause it functions. Down at the corner, public corner, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Can you just push it over here?
Oh.
All right, so now we have Walt Hudson.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The only thing I wanted to say was that road, by the way, is 26 feet wide.
Sir, you have to direct all your comments to the commission, okay?
That road is 26 feet.
And then just state for the record, your address.
Walt Hudson, 103 Blackbirch Court, Sunwood condos.
Right.
That roadway, as I said, is 26 feet wide. My main concern, again, is this. Last winter, we had someone that had a heart attack at Red Oak. Up at Red Oak, which is the street at the top of the condos. They sent a fire truck to pick them up Blackbirch. Pick them up to Red Oak, and it came up Sunwood Drive. That road being 26 feet wide, if the complexes on either side don't have adequate parking, because there is no visitor parking, if they park cars in the street, I don't think the fire truck could get by, because their cars are too wide. And I think they will park in the street down there. And I think that might be an issue. And I'm not trying to kill this project. I think it's a viable project and we should have it done. I'm not opposed to it. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. All right, last call for any one here in the auditorium. Mr. Rossetti, is there anyone on Zoom? Okay, and what's the first person's name? David? All right, will the person whose name is David that is participating via Zoom, please identify yourself and your address.
Sure. Hi, my name is David Mullaney. I am the property owner at 275 Bridgeport Avenue, which is the wiffle ball building.
Okay, David, do me a favor, spell your last name for the stenographer.
Sure, it's Mullany.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, my our concern really is with any projects really that affect the old Bridgeport Avenue is really with traffic, you know, and just having more cars empty out through what is just really an access road. Now it seems to be getting busier and busier as projects grow in the neighborhood. You know, I just wanted to go on record as voicing my concerns with that. And you know, we've always tried to be a pretty good neighbor. You know, the last thing we want to get involved with is, you know, there are trucks that back into our facility that you know, take a minute or two to clear old Bridgeport Ave as they back in. And you know, kind of the last thing we're looking for is to have you know, people on their morning commute come pulling out and be upset with having to wait a second for as a truck backs in, or conversely on the way home. You know, it's just getting busier and busier, and you know, it's just kind of puts pressure on us at our end. And really, that's our main concern. And I appreciate your time, and I thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Mr. Mullaney. Mr. Is there anybody else on Zoom? Okay, last call for anyone who is participating by Zoom. If you'd like to address the commission, please use the raise your hand function. All right, how about phone? No one's participating by phone at all. All right, so no phone. Where am I? Yeah, okay, so. All right, Attorney Thomas, do you want to remark on any comments from the public at this time? You're on mute. Attorney Thomas, you're on mute. I could see you.
Lips are going, there's no one.
I keep forgetting. Yeah,
There you go.
we will address hopefully the traffic concerns at the continuation of the meeting. We have a traffic report coming in. We've listened to all the comments, and thankfully we'll be able to refresh ourselves by watching this again, and then we can address it at the next meeting, given the fact that it's 10 of 10.
Yes, we can. Right, so Mr. Panico, any final comments?
Not at this time.
Okay, all right, seeing that there aren't any other comments from the commission, is there a motion to continue the public hearing?
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing. This is Commissioner Lascos.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lascos, and Commissioner Parkins has indicated she will second. So on the motion to continue the public hearing from Commissioner Lascos, seconded by Commissioner Parkins, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Ticky?
Aye.
Commissioner Motto?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Parkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Lascos?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion to continue the public hearing has passed 6-0. And this item will be on the agenda, upcoming meeting for discussion, continuation. So, all right, so the next agenda item is approval of the June 22nd, 2022 meeting minutes. There was a question from Commissioner Kelly back at our July 12th, 2022 meeting, when these minutes were on the agenda, whether or not the reference to 50% of its revenue made on premises was correct. I did review the YouTube video, and I believe the correct wording should be 50% of its revenue is from products produced on the premises.
I believe that's correct.
Okay, all right, so Commissioner Kelly is confirming, as well as Commissioner Parkins. So does anyone else have any comment on that or any other portion of the June 22nd minutes?
Chair, this is Commissioner Laskos. I was absent that meeting, so I'll be abstaining.
Okay. All right, so there aren't any other comments about the June 22nd meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve as amended.
Okay, Commissioner Kelly is making a motion to approve as amended. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Amato, thank you. So on the motion to approve as amended, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Parkins? Aye. Commissioner Commissioner Tiki?
I'll abstain. I was absent.
Okay. Commissioner Amato?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
And Commissioner Laskos is abstaining, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and Commissioner Harger votes aye. So the motion to approve the June 22nd, 2022 minutes as amended has passed by a vote of 4-0-2.
We really adjourn at 8 o'clock? Wow.
So seeing that there's no other item on the agenda, the chair declares that the this evening's meeting is adjourned as of 9:56 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Our next meeting is in August.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.